folks, Julian here. So, I know that I had said earlier that these E3 episodes were going to be light on editing because I just don't have time to do it while I'm out in the field, and that is true. I haven't listened to this episode, but it might not sound very good, and I apologize for that. I was recording on Skype from my hotel room on some very poor Wi-Fi, and I'm pretty sure there's some roboting in here and just some rough parts, and I'm sorry, I can't work around that tonight. So it is what it is. It's a fun episode. I think you'll enjoy it. It's all about educating Angelo on all the stuff that he missed because he's been away from the internet for the last few days and has no idea what's going on at E3. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and I apologize for the audio quality. There's just no getting around it today. So that's it. Enjoy.
Here we go, off the rails. But you know, it's time to raise our sails. It's freedom like you never knew. Any bags or a pass, say the word, I'll be there in a flash. You could say my hat is off to you. Oh, we can zoom all the way to the moon. Oh, this great wide wacky world. Jump with me, grab coins with me, oh yeah.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the second E3 special from Nerds Without Pants. I am Julian, and I'm joined as always by Angelo.
A very confused and dark, and I have no idea what's going on, Angelo.
This is true.
Yeah.
As I said on our first E3 special, Angelo's been in the woods.
Yup.
Literally.
Like, in the woods to the point where something literally tried to steal our garbage. It was amazing.
And so what we thought we would do, Patrick isn't here, but he should be on later. So we thought it would be really fun, since Angelo has literally been dark on all E3 news and has kept himself as such, that I will kind of walk him through some of the bigger announcements and get his live reacts on the air.
Of takes.
The hottest of takes.
Can't get any hotter than this.
So I guess we'll go in order. I'll probably save the Sony and Ubisoft and Nintendo until Patrick gets on, unless it seems like we don't have a lot of steam going, in which case we might just have to cover that as a matter of course. But, so EA was on Saturday, and apologies to the listeners if we're repeating some stuff, but this is for Angelo's benefit, and I think it is going to be fun. EA, speaking of the hottest of takes, Angelo, sure. They were gunning hard for the influencer market.
Oh.
It was, their press conference was lousy with YouTube celebrities and like faux Twitch streamers and stuff like that, to the point that the story mode for the new FIFA game is literally like, the way that they framed it was all of these like fake influencers basically talking about this fake soccer player who's the main character of the story mode. And it's like, this is what we've come to now.
So, okay, you came through the hot takes. Here they are. I have no problem with like YouTube being what it is. Like, I think that's great.
Sure.
I don't know if I want to play a game about that. I mean, it's FIFA,
right,
so I don't really care. but you know, that just seems like it's an interesting experiment. You know, let's see what happens, because maybe like the generation that's coming up right behind us will be really into it.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I think that they already are. It's just, but I wonder how savvy they are. Like because you know, like I think our generation, and I'm feeling it more and more as the geeks have ascended. Mm-hmm. I'm starting to feel more and more jaded towards it, in the sense that like I feel like I'm being overly pandered and marketed towards.
Right.
Where, you know, like I was literally at Target the other day thinking this, because like Target now has like a whole section in the electronics section that's like all geek paraphernalia. And 14-year-old Julian would have been all over that shit because
Right.
I couldn't find that stuff anywhere. But now I'm just like, this stuff is everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I wonder if, like, the YouTube generation, if they're like, oh, this is cool, we're being represented, or if it's like, y'all don't know what we're about. You know, this just stinks.
I'm going to guess, based on my past experience of the whole how do you do fellow kids things that companies did when we were younger, that it's going to be the latter. You know?
Yeah.
And also, how much, like, I don't even know if that's the right thing to do. I mean, again, this isn't really my deal, but like, video games aren't a live event. Sports are a live event. They usually have people doing live commentary. And from what I understand, most people just watch the game and absorb the live commentary as it's published and don't really like go later on to watch some YouTuber like, hey, what was their take on whatever soccer game happened? Like, I don't know if that's really a thing. You know what I mean?
I think it is,
Okay.
but it's a very, like, you gotta walk a real fine line with this stuff, and like, it can come off super awkward, like, not to get too far ahead, but like, there was one game, and I don't even remember the name of it, because they showed it so quickly at the Microsoft presser. It's like a stylish looking, like, third person shooter, but they didn't really give any context for it, and then all of a sudden this shoutcaster comes out and is doing like his whole, like, bombastic over the top commentary, and it's like, what just happened? Like, he was out there for like 2 minutes, called the end of this match for a game that nobody knows what it is, and then they were gone.
That's so weird.
What's happening?
Boy, yeah, that feels really kind of ham-fisted.
Yeah.
All right, moving on.
So moving on, and then so what I was getting at with the influencer stuff is that, like, they actually had like a YouTube personality introduce one of their major titles, which was Need for Speed Payback, and it was as awkward as you would think it would be as far as the presentation went. But that's a game that might be on your radar, Angelo.
Okay.
It is, like I said to Patrick, it reminded me of like Fast and the Furious meets Burnout.
Okay, I'm listening. You said Burnout.
Yeah. Like, it's story based and it's mission, like, objective based. And so what they showed was you're trying to take down this big rig, but on the way to the big rig, there's a bunch of like these black SUVs and like BMWs that are, I guess, the bad guys or whatever, and they're trying to stop you from taking down the big rig, so you're trying to force them off the road, and every time that you take them down, it's a Burnout style takedown. Like, the slow-mo,
yeah,
like, flips, the hard deformation, just really cool looking stuff. And then it goes back and forth between like real time and cutscene, like almost seamlessly, and it looks real hot. Like, I'm not even a big driving guy, but this tickles me in such a way that it might be a future purchase for me.
So here's the other thing. Like, we didn't talk about Burnout a whole lot, but Burnout had a real good sense of speed and a real arcadey, like, over the top, really bright, really, like, just stopping short of garish, right? Like, giant arrows flashing to tell you, like, okay, you need to turn right here. Like, is that what it looks like? Or is it a little bit more reserved?
A little bit more reserved,
Okay.
but not drastically so.
Okay.
It's very colorful. It's going for realistic graphics, but it's definitely an arcade racer, like just straight up. So that could be something special, and it does have a very good sense of speed. So that's going to be one to check out for sure. I mean, you'll check all this stuff out after we record this,
of course.
but these are the hottest, the livest takes.
Yeah.
There's really not a ton from EA. They went real hard on sports this year. And they, as you can imagine, BioWare didn't have a large presence. They did announce a new BioWare game called Anthem, but they didn't actually show it, like they showed a cinematic, but they didn't show what the game is until Microsoft, so I'll get to it there.
Okay.
But it was funny, like, I've been writing up stuff for the press conferences at Pixelbit, and when I referred to BioWare, I called them former RPG developed BioWare.
Wow.
feel is apt because they don't make RPGs anymore. Let's just be real. Mass Effect Andromeda is not an RPG. And Anthem is very much not an RPG.
Yeah.
The one thing before we move on from EA, and I mentioned it before to Patrick, that really stood out to me, is this new game called A Way Out. Mm-hmm. And it's from the creator of Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, which came out a few years ago.
I've been meaning to play that game. I really want to play that game. I have not yet, but it seems like a great idea.
Yeah. Very great idea. And this is also an amazing idea. And I was thinking you, actually. And so I'm pretty sure the content is fairly mature, but I know your oldest is, getting up there. And this game is 100% co-op.
Oh.
From the get-go. You cannot play this single player. It is all co-op.
Oh, wow.
You can play it online, but the designer wants people to play it together sitting on a couch next to each other. And it's all split screen except when you're in the same cutscene together. So it does this really cool dynamic thing where one player who has if they're in one player can be in a cutscene while the other character has full control and can even witness the other player's cutscene from their own vantage point, which is bonkers. And it's a prison break game.
Okay.
And you have one character who's been in prison and another character who's just coming to prison. And so the way the split screen works is that it's usually not like a straight 50-50 ratio. There's just one player that has more of the screen depending on what's going on. Okay. And it seems to prioritize cutscenes. But had kind of a Hitman 2016 feel in the way that you got a lot of options to accomplish objectives, like distracting guards or, sneaking around areas and finding different items and different ways of initially trying to escape from prison. But it was very clear from the trailer that there's much more to the game than just getting out of prison, because they showed plenty of scenes where they are out of prison and then there's all sorts of stuff going down once they're on the outside. But it just looked like so unique and fresh, that concept of we're in this together from the beginning to the end, and that's kind of a cool concept. I don't know how well it's going to sell. Yeah. It can be difficult, especially if if you're forced to play it online, you don't have anybody to play on the couch with, and then if it turns out there's not a lot of people doing that, then that game could be DOA. But I thought it looked really cool. It's actually, even now, probably one of the games that has stood out the most to me out of everything.
That does sound interesting. Keep an eye on it for sure and see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So EA. No Star Wars from EA?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's what they ended with. Yes.
Okay.
They didn't show the new Visceral game, which is what I really wanted to see.
Yeah.
Instead they went real hard on Battlefront 2, and it looks real damn good.
Yeah, it's kind of predictable,
It looks bloody gorgeous. Oh, go ahead.
Are they going to write the ship? Are they going to make a campaign? Are they going to make, because everybody was complaining about how they handled the last one. It's still sold.
Yeah.
But,
totally riding the ship. They actually had the actress who's playing the main character in the campaign present the game, which I thought was pretty interesting. And
cool.
I don't know how much of it was her being scripted or anything, but she seemed like the wording that she used seemed like she was a fan.
Good.
Unless they were telling her to say we wanted this and we wanted that, because that's what she was saying. But they also had John Boyega from The Force Awakens on video saying hey, I really love this game and I really wanted a campaign and I can't wait for you guys to see it because it's really good. It's really cool. So that stuff looks really good. Of course, that's not what they showed at the show.
Right.
They did a full on multiplayer match. It took place in the city of Naboo from episode 1, which is my favorite location in the prequels. It's so pretty.
Yeah.
And it looks real damn good, into the Battlefront 2, engine. But the multiplayer gets real weird, man, because it's it's a big old melting pot. So even though it was battle droids versus clone troopers, well, actually that's all because there weren't clone troopers in episode 1, but the hero characters can be whoever you want to pick. So like at one point someone was Boba Fett, another point was Han Solo, and then somebody had Darth Maul. So, you know, which is cool. Like that's kind of what you want, right? Like you don't want to be restricted in multiplayer.
Right.
You want to just be able to do whatever. And that's what they're letting people do. So
I mean, at some point you have to just go, okay, that's a video game, and that's why this is happening. Then be okay with it. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah,
all right.
And actually, I think a lot of developers need to remember that. Like games are starting to get a little too real. Mm-hmm. It's like I don't need this to be explained. Just let me do it for quality of life. Like, you know, I'm already buying the fact that my character has superpowers, so I don't need this weird arbitrary like inventory restriction or something because I'm supposed to somehow believe they can't carry, you know,
right,
30,000 items or something like that. It's just kind of silly. The next big gun is Microsoft. That was on Sunday. Mm-hmm. And okay, so here's the thing, Angelo, is that a lot of people are very down on E3 as a whole this year as far as like what's been shown and everything like that. I don't really know where that's coming from because I have seen a lot of really good looking solid games. Not necessarily like, oh my God, this is game of the year potential type games, but a lot of a lot of good looking games on like every type of genre you can possibly think of, which there's kind of something for everyone. And that's good. Like there's a lot of stuff where I'm like, this isn't for me, but I know a lot of people who are going to be real happy that this exists.
Curious. Now that you've mentioned that, any big budget, like on a TV console, JRPGs, like turn-based, old school, anything like that?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah. Did Sony have? Yeah, there's actually a few that I saw at the show. And then Nintendo obviously has Xenoblade, and they showed it today, and that's looking real good.
Well, I wouldn't really. That's nothing, more action, kind of almost MMO style combat.
Sure. Well, if you're talking about traditional turn-based, then no.
Okay.
Because other than Persona, like people don't seem to be able to get away with it for some reason, which I think is a real bummer.
Yeah.
I don't think that type of RPG should go away.
Yeah.
So Microsoft started off their show, as expected. They unveiled the Scorpio proper. I can't wait for this. The official title of the Scorpio is the Xbox One X.
Wait, what? Xbox One X?
Yes. Not to be confused with the Xbox One S.
I really wish the video was working right now because I'm making all sorts of weird faces. Like, what? Oh my gosh. Okay, like this isn't quite as bad as like new 3DS, but we're getting there. We're making some mistakes with our branding. Xbox One X. No, that's a mistake.
Now, the Giant Bomb guys made a good point. Is that it abbreviates to XBOX, right? Xbox One
cute.
X.
Yep.
So that is kind of cute. I think people would still call it an Xbone though, because it's still Xbone.
And I think that is what it breaks down to. XB1. I mean, go on then.
So they touted the specs, and as Digital Foundry had said, like it's a beast. It's a ridiculously powerful system, but shockingly smaller than any Xbox that's ever existed. It's smaller than the Xbox One S. It's very sleek looking. And I was completely shocked by that. Like I thought for sure it would be the size of at least the original Xbox One, just because of how powerful it's supposed to be. Using the same controller, it's all the same accessories and everything like that. It's coming out November 7th. It retails for $4.99.
That all lines up with more or less what everybody was expecting, except for the size. Like, is it like the size of a Wii U or a little bit bigger than that?
It's bigger than that.
Okay.
Because the surface area is bigger than that, but it's thinner than a Wii U.
Huh.
Like the bottom to top is well, at least it looks thinner than a Wii U. So it's a svelte system, to be sure. And yeah, so $4.99, that's definitely seems fair. I think that, and I don't know, obviously I don't know the business behind it, but like really they needed to try to cut that down to $3.99 just to like really stick it to the competition and really try to make some headway. Fortunately, not to get too far ahead, but Sony didn't actually end up dropping the PS4 price like I thought they would for the Pro, probably because they don't need to. But that would have been a real bad look for Xbox if they released a second $500 console, and then Sony's like, we're even cheaper than $100 this time.
Wow.
But they didn't go that far. All of the games shown for the remainder of the press conference were shown on the Xbox One X. And, a big problem with Microsoft the last couple of years has been a lack of software, right? Like a lack of exclusives for sure, but even just software in general. They showed 42 games at this press conference.
Okay. Exclusives or just
22 of them are exclusives of some flavor. Either timed exclusives or console exclusive. I mean, obviously, like a lot of the stuff's going to come to PC, but a lot of it was exclusive in some way. And now keep like a lot of these are indie games, like coming out just for Xbox Live.
Right.
A lot of them are timed exclusive. It'll probably come out like 6 months to a year after on other systems. But even so, going from the 5 that they had before to 22, that's a pretty big number.
It is.
And then 42 games total that they showed. I mean, it was a lot to take in. And honestly, like, you should probably just watch that whole press conference because there's just way too much to even go over. They started with 4.
This is interesting because now we've got a real legit power gap between these two consoles.
Mm-hmm.
But then are they actually going to put the effort in, and what's their motivation to put the extra effort into really taking advantage of the Xbox Ones or the Xbox X? That's going to be a problem. Power, that's going to be hard for me to try to say for a bit.
And that is an excellent question, Angelo, because I was thinking the same thing. The games that they showed looked flippin' phenomenal.
Right.
But at the same time, I was like, but are these just going to look flippin' phenomenal anyway? Like, are they going to look good? Like, obviously they should look better on the X. But when you're talking, like, it's hard for me to parse what this is going to be. And I decided at the press conference that I'm not buying it this year. I'm definitely buying one, but I want to wait until people get their hands on it and they start showing like real good comparison videos between the regular version and the Xbox One X version as well. I mean, it's the same disc, obviously, but I want to see where that graphical power is going. They started off with Forza 7, which, I mean, whatever. It's another Forza game. Like, I really couldn't care less. But, like, the weather effects were really incredible. They showed, this part where, like, it's raining, and so you see, like, the really cool, like wet pavement always shows really well when you're trying to show off your graphic. But then what really blew me away with the lighting and the color. And they had this part where the storm had passed, or the storm had finished, like it wasn't raining anymore, and they're coming around the corner, and the video game before, Angelo, it looked amazing. Like it looked like real life. I felt like you were going to say something.
No, I was trying to, but the call's dropping in and out real bad. Like I heard right up until you said come around the corner, and it's like the big crescendo, and I heard nothing more.
Oh, I'm sorry. you see the sun peeking through the clouds.
Uh-huh.
Like you would
like
when a storm is
dispersing.
ending.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. Like, and it looked real. Like,
yeah.
I was so blown away by that, and that transition from like darkness to light. Like I said, I have a really excellent TV, and so one of the things that I've really loved on that TV is the HDR. And part of that, what I've noticed with it is, when you go from like dark caverns to outside, like that change is very, not abrupt, but like it's like night and day. It's amazing. Like, on Mass Effect Andromeda, when I come out of like a cave into the outdoors, I'm almost blinded by the sun, just like you would be in real life. Like, it's really cool. So seeing more of that, with the X, that definitely excites me. And like I had said in our prediction episode, like, I just kind of want my games to look as good as they can on this TV. So even if they didn't have any exclusives, it's more of like, well, I just want them to look really, really excellent, right?
I mean, you spend all that money on a TV, you want to use it. It makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. Then let's see. I'm trying to remember what the order was. I think the next big thing was Assassin's Creed Origins, which they finally, Ubisoft is a leaky ship, and everybody knew that Assassin's Creed was going to take place in Egypt.
Yep.
But damn, like, the draw distance on that map was really good, and the environments looked real pretty, like real damn pretty. Yeah. They had an actual gameplay demo at the press conference, but I really couldn't get a good sense of if they've improved the combat, because I feel that the combat's the weakest part of those games. So we'll have to wait and see, but they went real heavy on RPG mechanics. Like, you level up and you get loot, you get fat loot with green numbers that go up, and, at one point the character picks up a legendary bow, and that, it's like I start scratching, like, oh yeah, you got that legendary bow there. That's some good loot.
So
good loot.
There's some Diablo in here now, huh?
Yes, and I'm so susceptible to that stuff.
Yeah, you know what? I mean,
I won't even lie.
I want to play a game. There's not enough games set in Egypt. There really isn't. Like ancient Egypt, and there's a lot of really cool, just sort of, the whole that pantheon isn't represented anywhere. I don't even think Final Fantasy pulled gods from that pantheon for anything, and they've got them from like every religion ever. It's not represented. I think like maybe Serious Sam or something, or there was like some no, there was some first-person shooter that was set in ancient Egypt, and I only remember that it existed. I don't even remember if it was any good.
Was it that Saturn game?
Yes, it was on the Saturn, but there was another version of it on the PC, and they were very, very different. That's all I remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, cool that it's being represented. Not sure if I'm not really into the Assassin's Creed games. I think I keep missing the good ones for whatever reason. But I don't know. Maybe I will just because Egypt. That's cool. We'll see.
That's kind of my thinking too, is like Egypt and then like Norse mythology are like the two that I really am intrigued by just on a personal level that I don't see in video games very much. I mean, there's more Norse in video games than for sure, but not a ton, but Egypt for sure. Like, I mean, I have to go back to like Sphinx and the cursed mummy, on like the PlayStation 2 and GameCube and Xbox.
Right.
Like to really, that's pretty far back. So
was there a Stargate game even?
I'm sorry?
Was there a Stargate game even? Anything like that?
There was, but like that was like Super Nintendo.
Yeah, it wasn't memorable, I don't think.
Yeah. So. It guess what? It was a side-scrolling platform action game. You can probably imagine you can probably just picture it. Like, you're probably right.
I'm imagining like Super Star Wars, but I don't know, not as good and, Egypt-y. So.
Yeah, throwing a little more Prince of Persia in there.
Sure.
Like, I think the animations were a little more rotoscoped style.
That's kind of neat.
Yeah. Speaking of like Prince of Persia and stuff, and oh man, I'm not going to look it up because our internet connection is real bad right now, but there was a game that they showed briefly at the Microsoft press conference, because they had like a bunch of like indie games and stuff that looked like goddamn Flashback.
Oh, wow.
Like, holy crap, did it look like Flashback.
That's a game I haven't heard about in a while.
Yeah, and this looked real damn good. Like, side-scrolling and everything.
Oh, wow.
But polygonal and very, very much going for a Blade Runner vibe as far as the aesthetic goes. And that was a total standout for me. They showed it for, like, maybe 10 seconds, but it was a very memorable 10 seconds. So
speaking of indie,
when you go look at the press conference.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Speaking of indie, where's Cuphead? Have we heard anything about Cuphead in a while?
Yes, they announced the release date this year, September.
Okay, so
September,
soon.
October. It was a very short trailer because they've shown it so many times. But they put a new filter on it that I think makes all the difference because now it straight up looks like a cartoon from that era. Like before, it was the animation style, but now it actually looks like something that you would have pulled from the archives.
That's amazing.
So
it's got like the little hairs that you would find on the film and like
exactly
the weird sort of not perfect frame rate that they sort of had. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah.
But like
it's totally doing that now.
Wasn't a consistent, like, it's, if you've seen the old cartoons, like the hand-drawn old cartoons, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and it totally looks like that now.
That's awesome.
So
that's
looks
exciting.
really good. Yeah. Crackdown 3, Terry Crews is playing your commanding officer, which I feel that's all I really have to say about Crackdown 3, because it's freaking Terry Crews. It's a real funny intro to the trailer. But the game itself doesn't really do anything for me personally, mainly because I'm already sold on Agents of Mayhem, which I think is doing what Crackdown 3 wants to do, but with more style.
Okay.
But not, I don't think it has the destructible environments that Crackdown 3 does. Crackdown 3 blows up real good. Those explosions look real nice. But other than that, like, I'm not really invested in Crackdown.
Are the explosions harnessing the power of the cloud, Julian? Do we know? Yeah.
I don't think the cloud anymore. Except for cloud saves.
Right.
So
they were talking about how they were going to like kind of offload some of that processing, and I guess that didn't happen.
Yeah. Because I think they tried to do that with Titanfall also, and I think they did. Like I think they offloaded like the creep AI, like for just the grunts onto the cloud or something like that. But I don't know if they really needed to do that. I think it was more just like, hey, we have this feature on a new system, let's try it out, and then never use it again.
Yeah. Well, it's probably more limited than they anticipated. Like a little bit of a, oh gosh, what's his name there? Your boy, Peter Molyneux. A little bit of him kind of rubbed off on them a little bit, I think, when they were talking about all that cloud stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So. It's
going to be the greatest thing ever. With it, this blade of grass will grow into a wonderful field.
It will remember if you stepped on it when you were a small child.
Let's see. More Microsoft stuff. Kind of drawing a blank. I'm very tired. They showed a bunch of exclusives. Sea of Thieves. I mean,
yeah.
They showed a longer demo of it that gave you more of an inkling of what that game's going to be. And it looks real good, but real good if you have like a dedicated crew. Like, I think that game is going to live or die based on who's playing it with you. And I think it's going to be one of those things where you almost want to do like a game night for Sea of Thieves, where it's like you and 3 of your buddies. It's like, it's Sea of Thieves night and we're just going to do this. Cause I can't see you really having a good time with randos in that game.
Yeah.
Cause it's very co-op based, like to the point that if one person has the treasure map, they can basically turn it around to show everybody else so that they can read off of the actual physical map.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I thought it was really nifty. Like, so, when you show them like going off of it to an island to find this treasure, and the map was actually like a riddle, and all that worked really well. Like you at one point they were like, it's 11 paces to the northwest from this spot, and so they pull out their compass, you turn to the northwest and count out 11 paces, and the characters in such a way when they're moving that you can very easily count the number of steps. And then they had to dig, and then sure enough there was some treasure, and they had to fight some skeletons on the way in and out, which so it's definitely not trying to be a pirate simulator so much as it's like, think more Pirates of the Caribbean.
Well, the art style's a little
Sid Meier's
too.
Pirates.
I mean, like they were kind of playing
exactly.
that right from the beginning. Like, this is not serious pirate time. This is fun pirate time.
Yeah, and that's what I mean, because you can actually launch yourself onto enemy ships with your cannon.
That's fantastic.
You can get into your cannon and then fire yourself. Yeah. And they showed like the weather effects, because they at first they were on calm seas, and then they cut to a ship-to-ship battle in a terrible storm, and like the way that the waves are crashing and everything just looks real good. Again, it's not for me because I'm a single player type of guy, but I think that people who get into that game are going to have a lot of fun with it, and I'm glad that stuff exists. Like a lot of this stuff is like, I'm glad that an audience is being served with these games. Even if it's not necessarily me. I remember, like, it was like one of the first games they showed, and I don't know why I forgot it, because it's actually the one that I like the most, from the Microsoft press conference. It was, the new Metro game, called Metro Exodus. And it, again, like talking about lighting and stuff like that, made a real big difference on the Xbox One X stuff. And so it starts off with like a character like in the caverns, and they have the gas mask on like they do in the Metro games. Runs afoul of some monsters, and like one of them cracks the mask, and he's trying to fight his way out, and the weapons now look like real BioShocky. Kind of that like this is obviously a crossbow, but it looks like other things have been bolted onto it to make it more useful, but like very clearly not part of the original specs.
Kind of a big clunky.
Yeah, exactly. But what was interesting, because I haven't played the Metro games, but I know a little bit of the lore, and I always thought that when you were outside, you had to have the mask on, and then when you were underground, you were okay. Here, they flipped the script where you needed the gas mask in the underground chamber, but then as soon as the character gets out, he takes the mask off, and the game looks beautiful. And again, that transition from dark indoor cavern to outdoor in the sun was amazing. Like, think about like when you get out of the vault in Fallout 3, but then pump that up by like 1,000.
That's cool.
It's real nice. And they showed the character fight like sort of like looked like some sort of mutated bear, some other stuff thrown in. But what was really cool about that was, and I couldn't tell if this was scripted or not, but the bear was like they were near a ledge, and the bear was coming towards the character. The character like hit it with like an explosive bolt from their crossbow, and then the explosion caused slide off the cliff. And it was trying to like scabber back onto the cliff, but then they shot it again in the head and it fell. And if you can do that type of like emergent environmental stuff in the game, like that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
But I'll take that with a grain of salt, because, it could have just been a very scripted, gameplay demo. So, we'll see. I guess the last big thing first off was, and I thought it was kind of funny because they had been making such a big deal about timed exclusives and full exclusives and stuff like that, but then they ended with a multiplayer or multi-platform game. But it was that game Anthem from BioWare. And it's a third-person shooter that's open world, and the characters get into these mech suits called javelins, but they're very like, think less Gundam and think more Iron Man.
Okay.
As far as the form factor, right?
Okay.
So when you're wearing them, like you're probably like 8 or 9 feet tall in them, but it's not like super thick armor unless you're spec'd that way. Like it's super Destiny. Like straight up, like there's no way that they can avoid comparisons to Destiny because that's just what it looks like, except in third person. But instead of like armor, you're getting suits of armor, but like I guess you can swap out, bits and pieces of them. You can, equip them with different weapon loadouts and things like that.
Isn't there an MMO that's like that? I can't think of it right now. I want to say Warframe, but I don't know if that's right.
I think Warframe is more traditional mech style.
Okay.
Like where you're piloting something. This is very much like I am, in this suit and like that arm is my arm type of thing. But, you can live out your Iron Man fantasies because like the one that they showed was totally just flying around. It wasn't like a boost jet or anything. It was like full independent flight. And then at one point they dive underwater and they're like exploring underwater and then they jump jet like back out of the water and it looked real damn pretty. The most interesting thing for me in the demo, so when it started out, the main character, it's in a first person perspective and they're obviously in some sort of town, like a hub world. And the character's just walking through this marketplace and without prompting, without like pressing an A button or anything like that, this NPC comes up and starts talking to the main character and basically says like, hey, like, I know I messed up. I hired these mercenaries. I thought they could get the job done, but they didn't. Now they're missing. Like, can you please go find them? And it starts a quest. And I thought that looked really cool. And I'm hoping that that's the way the game is structured, where you're not just finding these static NPCs that are just waiting to, for you to talk to them so that they give you a quest.
Right.
But instead, like, maybe you're walking by a shop and somebody says, hey, like, I know you. Can you come over here real quick? And it, kind of makes you feel more like you're a player, like, in this play instead of,
it's almost like, and this is something that I have not mentioned on NWQ before, but it always kind of bugs me about RPGs especially, because that's where they do this a lot, which is like, your character is kind of usually reluctantly trying to save the world, like he's had this whole thing thrust upon him. And then that script is usually at odds with the fact that every time he walks into a town, he literally goes looking for trouble. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, let me go around and talk to a bunch of people and figure out what more trouble I can get myself into. Like, it just doesn't quite work if you think about it a lot. And this approach where you walk into a town and somebody sees you and goes, oh, that's the guy, I'm going to go talk to him, makes a lot more sense to me. So that kind of works.
And I also, like for me, like I'm getting real tired of the whole, like, the quest log thing where it's like, I just need to run into this town and talk to all these people with exclamation points on their head. Like, I don't even care. Like, it's just, I'm ticking off boxes, like I'm not invested in it. Where here it's like if somebody's actually like trying to get my attention and then comes up and talks to me, it's like I'm automatically more invested because it's like they saw me and felt like they needed to come to me, and it's like, oh, I didn't want to miss you. Like, I need to talk to you right now. Like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So let's see. I guess Patrick's not on yet, and it'll probably be about half an hour or so, but we'll go ahead and start moving on into the more recent stuff that we haven't talked about yet.
We can always double back a little bit for him.
Yeah, absolutely. See, I know he's got some things to say about the last couple, but surprisingly, Ubisoft might have won damn E3. They have a very impressive showing, and also, like, not to get too far ahead, but like a super impressive booth where the last time I was at E3, like, Ubisoft was not that. They weren't, they were still a smaller player, but now it's like major real estate on the show floor. Angelo, you know how there was that rumor about that Mario and Rabbids game?
Yeah.
What if I were to tell you that not only does it exist, but Miyamoto kicked off the Ubisoft press conference?
What? Get out of here.
I am dead serious.
This is Nintendo we're talking about?
Well, it's a Ubisoft-developed game.
Well, sure, but hold on. But Nintendo owns Miyamoto. Let's not mince words here, okay? He does not appear on that stage unless 3 other people, like, sign that off and be like, yes, you can do this. Man, and I don't want to keep coming back to this, but I guess the sort of structural changes that happened over there, unfortunate as they may be, really did change the direction for the company. Because this would have never happened before, I don't think.
Yeah, and you got to remember, too, that with Nintendo not doing their E3 press conferences anymore, there aren't opportunities for Miyamoto to come out and be Miyamoto at E3. And in this game, Mario uses guns. Okay, they're freaking Mega Man style blasters.
Well, sure, but that was in the original design docs for Mario.
Was it really?
Yeah, they changed it to a fireball. He originally had a gun.
Interesting. I didn't know that. But these, these are definitely like arm cannons that, that put your arm into. But Miyamoto came out to the stage wearing one of those, and then Yves Guillemot, the head at Ubisoft, also got one, and they kind of posed down with them and everything. And, if you were to guess, what do you think the Mario Rabbids game would be?
I would say a goofy, lighthearted, sort of almost Paper Mario, or, like those handheld RPGs that they do, something along those lines.
What if I were to tell you that it's XCOM?
What? Mario? What?
It's a strategy RPG.
I'm interested in this, though. Go on.
You have to utilize full and waist high cover. And you have to worry about line of sight.
Mario's in a freaking cover shooter?
Well, but strategy RPG shooter. But yeah.
This is wild.
Teamed up with Rabbids that are dressed like Peach and Luigi and Mario. It's real weird, Angelo, but it's really, really damn good looking.
It sounds amazing. So wait, what are they fighting?
They're fighting evil Rabbids. So the premise is that the Rabbids have fallen into the Mushroom Kingdom, and as a result, the Mushroom Kingdom has gone all screwy, and everything is Rabbids themed.
Huh.
And so all the architecture and stuff is basically replace any Koopa style designs and slot in Rabbids, but it's still very much the Mushroom Kingdom. It's like the verdant, plains, and it's the Mario aesthetic, but with a bunch of Rabbids kind of all over the place. But
I want to play
it. It looks real funny. It looks real funny, and there's some really good use of the Mario style in this strategy RPG, in the sense that if you jump onto one of your teammates, you can use that to extend your movement. So you can actually almost double where you can get to on the map by jumping off of the head of one of your teammates.
That kind of sounds like a Disgaea thing almost. You know how they do that kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. This is a wild thing that I just really, really need to see.
Yes, bad. And this is for the Switch, and honestly, that's probably sold me on the Switch more than just about anything. Because it looks real damn good.
It sounds amazing.
Then, of course, they brought out some of the known quantities. Assassin's Creed Origins, they showed a little bit more of that. Far Cry 5 looks real good. Definitely, they're going more for a multiplayer co-op thing with that. And it was kind of funny. And I'm watching all these press conferences with the giant bomb guys talking over them. And Jeff Gerstmann made a real good point that the trailer that they showed at their press conference for Far Cry 5 was very humorous and very tongue in cheek.
Oh, good.
And he said it must have been a direct response to the initial, reaction to what the game is, because when he saw it at Judges Week, he was told it's a very serious story, we're so close to some of this stuff actually coming true, we just wanted to really tell a personal story, and then it's hey, here's the dog, and he's got a funny name.
Oh gosh, the last thing we need is, well, we don't need more powder and gasoline on this fire right now. We just don't. So I'm
Right.
kind of hoping they do kind of
Throttle back.
a little bit at least, because, geez, please don't do this. You know what I mean? Anyway, I don't want to get onto that at all.
Yeah. It looks real pretty. I'll be interested to see how, like, that Far Cry formula slots into, like, Middle America. If it is at all, like, unless they're going to do something real different to, like, you know, what we know as Far Cry 3 and 4 were.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to see what that's going to be.
Well, like, those Far Cry games had their moments that were lighthearted too, like that reminded you it was a video game, even though they also got real serious.
Oh, sure, but what I'm talking about is, like, you know, in Far Cry 3, like, you're skinning animals to make wallets because you're, like, a survivalist, and here it's like, well, like, am I really a survivalist? Like, I mean, maybe you have to be because you're in this small town and you're stuck, and, like, maybe the infrastructure is breaking down or something, but, like, some of the stuff that you do in those past couple Far Cry games, I can't really see you doing in the United States, but I could be wrong.
I mean, it's also, again, we might just have to do the same thing we did with, you know, the Star Wars game where you just have to look at it and go, yeah, video game.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Definitely. They announced The Crew 2, and I only bring it up because it looked real damn weird. Because your character, like, again, going back to, like, EA trying to do, like, the whole, like, faux influencer and stuff like that, like, the storyline here is that your character is trying to master all motorsports, and I think, like, the way that you level up, quote unquote, is, like, by your, like, social media presence and, like, your Facebook likes and all that type of stuff, like your magazine covers and all that stuff. But
sure.
You've got street racing, you've got off-road racing, you've got dirt bikes, you've got boats, you've got planes, you've got helicopters.
So, just back up for a second. I'm surprised The Crew 2 is a thing at all, because I don't think the first one did that well. But also, and maybe I'm wrong, but I never heard too much good about it. I heard mostly bad about it. But the other thing is, it's like, this almost seems like they have a better shot at making this come off genuine. And I don't know if that's true, but haven't they done, like, faux Twitter stuff embedded into games before in the past and things like that, where they sort of, they're tactfully social media aware in their stuff. Like, they don't go full tilt. They just sort of add it as a flavor to the world. Which is where I think it would fit better where they try to do that. It feels more genuine that way. I don't know if that's what they're going with this, because I didn't see it. You did. But
yeah, this seemed real heavy-handed. And yeah, I mean, sometimes that stuff works. Like, I mean, in South Park: The Stick of Truth, like, there's this whole part of the game where you were trying to, like, make friends on Facebook, and you were trying to add as many people as you could to it, and that actually was part of the storyline where it turned out that, like, the new kid had this incredible power to make friends, and, like, basically win influence that way, and, you know, it was kind of funny, and I think in the Fractured But Whole, I think they're switching to Twitter or Instagram or something like that.
Yeah, but that makes sense.
They showed a new trailer
too. Like, you can be ridiculous and heavy-handed and just bawdy with how you represent stuff in the South Park universe because it's South Park.
Exactly. So that's why I felt it was weird the way it was being done in The Crew, because it wasn't much different as far as I could tell. They showed a new trailer for the Fractured But Whole, and it was kind of funny because, you know, again, I'm watching this with the Giant Bomb guys. They were completely stone-faced for the whole thing, and I'm laughing my ass off. I'm like, this is real good.
I'm surprised, though. That seems like it would be up their alley. I mean, I didn't see what they showed, but...
yeah, I mean, I think the jokes were, well, I don't know, it's South Park. You should, you know what to expect.
They have a dancing, smiling, singing turd. I mean...
Yes.
So...
And I think maybe part of it is that, like, a bunch of them are not comic book fans, and so with them doing the whole, like, comic book spoof thing, like, that's just not playing for them already. But for me, like, I'm a big fan of that, and the whole subplot of, like, Cartman wanting to make this super team so that they can sell it and become an awesome movie franchise, that's real good to me. I like that stuff. So that's still one of my most anticipated games
I'm
of this year for sure.
Out. They had some of the newer material in there. Like I think they had the PC Bros in there at one point in some of the marketing. I could be wrong.
No, yeah. PC Principle definitely shows up.
That's what it was.
In those trailers. So, I'll be curious to see how that works. And they didn't show a lot of it on the stage, and I'll talk about it later, but I didn't play it at the show. But, the battle system is getting a big overhaul because it actually, to me, seems more like Lunar in the sense that you have to worry about spacing and, certain attacks will push or pull enemies closer or further away from you. And, you want to line up circles and stuff like that. So to me, I loved the way that, the Stick of Truth played. I thought it was like some great RPG mechanics, even if it was like way too easy. But this seems to be adding just like a little extra layer of strategy to it, which would be much welcome.
I loved the Lunar combat system. It's fantastic.
Me too.
So that's great.
What if I were to ask you, what could Ubisoft do to really get people talking? What do you think that would be?
Well, aside from a new IP?
Yes.
I'm trying to think of what they have and what they could do with it. You put me on the spot, and I don't know if I have anything here.
That's fine.
Just go for it.
Beyond Good and Evil. Oh
my gosh!
2 still exists.
For freaking real?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
okay.
I couldn't be more angry.
Oh.
I was so angry with what they showed.
Oh no.
Have you played Beyond Good and Evil?
I got about halfway through it, I think. I was really frustrated with the controls. I think I got the gist of the plot. I'm not going to say the game didn't stick with me. I think I got to it too late. I was playing it as a downloadable on the 360. I don't know. It didn't stick with me for some reason. I'm not saying it's a bad game. I'm saying I think I just came to it too late.
Yeah, and I got a lot of feedback, or I heard a lot of feedback from people on that particular version of the game that since you can't independently change the camera,
that was my problem.
Options, that really turned a lot of people off. And I don't know if that was in the original game or not. I might have just been okay with it back on the PS2 because I didn't know any better at the time. So first of all, Beyond Good and Evil 2, what they showed, it was only a cinematic trailer, which, they showed a cinematic trailer for that 9 years ago.
Yeah.
So that was a kind of a bummer. They're going for a real hyper realistic look for it. And I the wrong, you still have pigs and you still have anthropomorphic animals with humans, but now they're trying to go for at least in the CG, a very gritty look to it.
I don't want this.
Very detailed. Hold on.
Okay.
It starts off with a pig, but it's not Paige. He's got a Fu Manchu mustache, and he's brokering a deal with this monkey who has a cybernetic arm. The monkey is dropping F-bombs almost every other word, to the point that it's almost like he just learned how to cuss 2 days ago.
Right. Or it's a Tarantino movie. And one or the other.
No, because Tarantino has more subtlety than this.
Oh, jeez. That's a statement I've never heard.
He leaves, but not before he screws over the Fu Manchu pig, at which point the Fu Manchu pig says, I want you to find that effing monkey and get my effing money back before he can effing do this and effing do that.
How is this Beyond Good and Evil?
And then you find out that it's a prequel. So that's another black mark in my book, and it's multiplayer.
They didn't, what? I mean, I don't
There
know where
was
to begin,
nothing
but I'm
that
sure
they-
I'm sure we share the same thoughts on this. Now, I played a chunk, a very big chunk of Beyond Good and Evil. Didn't finish it. I keep thinking about going back there and doing that. But like from what I played, it was something I could stick in front of my kids and be like, you know, it's not edgy at all. It's just not. Like it feels like it could go edgy, but it doesn't really ever cross that line. You know, it just sort of toys with the idea of doing that.
Yeah, I mean, the main character is this really kind-hearted journalist who also takes care of a bunch of orphans. You know, and her uncle is a pig. And to go from that to this, like, then them throwing multiplayer in it, like, I was telling Casey at the show today that what it felt like to me is that Michel Ancel said, I really want to make Beyond Good and Evil 2. And Yves Guillemot said, well, you can do it, but it's not going to sell, so you need to do this, and this to it to ensure that as many people buy it as possible. And it's like, well, I don't really want to do that, but I want to make the game, so I guess I'll do that.
Well,
That's my reenactment of the meeting that resulted in this. But
or it sounded to me like they already had the script written for some sort of a other game, and they just said, we'll put it in the Beyond Good and Evil universe. It'll be great. You know? And then they just sort of like swapped out Gangster Dude for Pig and Gangster Dude for Monkey, and now you have game. So.
And they were talking about like, oh, you're going to visit multiple planets and this and that, and there's going to be space battles. And I'm like, guys, the first game sold terrible.
Mm-hmm.
This game is not going to sell well. Pull it back. Pull it way back.
Well, so they've simultaneously alienated they alienated a lot of the child audience because, well, parents that care aren't going to buy it for their kids, but I don't know how many of those actually exist. But they've alienated that market. They've alienated the fans immediately who wanted another Beyond Good and Evil.
I'd like to think so.
And I don't think the people that want like really gritty, crazy, heavy drama like stuff want to do it with a talking pig. I don't think those overlap. So what is this? I
have no idea. Yeah.
I mean, hot take.
Yeah, and then again,
I haven't seen any of this stuff, but this doesn't sound good at all.
Well, and then again, you know, like I said, they didn't show anything other than that. So, you know, like if they end up showing some gameplay and it looks incredible, then I'm willing to say that I'm wrong. But this is not, like, if you ask me what I want from a Beyond Good and Evil 2, none of this is. So,
or maybe it's a weird, like, side character, side plot thing?
Well, I would surmise, because they do show a human character with green eyes, but they only show her eyes. I would imagine that's probably Jade's mother.
Probably.
If it's going to be a prequel. But the way Beyond, I know you didn't finish it, but the way Beyond Good and Evil ends, you really want a sequel to that. You want to see where it goes from there. You don't want to go backwards. You want to go forwards.
Is it a cliffhanger type of ending?
It's not, it wraps up, but then there's a little sting at the end to set up a sequel where you're like, oh, I want to see what happens next. And then, you know, 15 years later. Right. Oh, geez.
Well, that
brings us to, yeah. I didn't see like the Twitter reactions or anything like that. I don't know what people's sense of this game is. I would imagine that just them saying that it's real probably got a lot of people really hyped for it. I'm not one of those people.
I mean, it wasn't trending when I accidentally opened Twitter that one time, so. Right.
I forgot to go back to one thing, and I know, like, you're not super invested in this, but we've talked about their graphics style before.
Sure.
The Guilty Gear team, Arc System Works, is taking that Guilty Gear Xrd cell shading style.
Which I like.
And applying it to, yes. Mm-hmm. They're applying it to a 3 versus 3 Dragon Ball Z fighting game that looks incredible.
So yeah, that doesn't hit anything that I'm necessarily interested in, except I really want to see what a Guilty Gear Dragon Ball game looks like, because that does sound like that sounds like a good fit, man.
Yeah. Like when I first started getting into Dragon Ball, I used to dream of Capcom making a versus game, like a Capcom versus Dragon Ball. And obviously that never happened, but this is the next best thing. It plays that fast and that chaotic and just looks real damn good. So if anything, you should see it during the Microsoft press conference if you watch that whole thing.
Oh, sure.
But after that, you should probably check out some gameplay footage of like some longer matches because Guilty Gear Xrd looked real good, but I think this actually eclipses it.
Well,
that's saying something.
So the art for a Dragon Ball game is more or less already established, and it was designed to be animated. So it's probably not as elaborate as the stuff they were doing for Guilty Gear. So, and I'm not trying to say that the art for Dragon Ball is simplistic or anything like that, but you know how they do anime, right? Like, they don't make all these crazy things that are going to be ridiculous to do frame after frame after frame. So I imagine that translates well to a video game where they can just like, okay, let's crank the other stuff up, and it ends up looking phenomenal. Like, this is me.
Yeah.
Just, again, we're doing hot takes. That's it. So.
Yeah.
I want to see that.
Moving on to Sony hot takes.
Mm-hmm.
Sony, I think, played it very safe. Actually, some may argue too safe.
Yeah.
Because they're... What's that?
I was going to say, like, I think they needed to do something because, like, they kind of came outclassed. So what are they going to do to, not necessarily outclassed, but, Microsoft threw out a stopgap console. Like, they now have a more powerful console here.
And you would argue that, like, Sony already did that with the PlayStation 4 Pro, but, I mean,
not to this degree.
As far as I can tell, the X, like, totally outclasses the Pro.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, Sony's so far ahead that I think I got the sense from this show, and they may be right that they don't really need to do a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but this might be that moment, because like last generation there was that tip, right, where all of a sudden Sony was ahead of Microsoft with the PlayStation 3. It took them a long time, but eventually they got there.
Right.
And I'm wondering if this is that one misstep where that happens, because with the 360 they ended up just like they kind of halted exclusives, right? Like, and then the PlayStation 3 was all of a sudden getting hot exclusives, and then that kind of tipped things the other way. So Sony didn't really show a lot of new stuff. Like, most of the show was stuff that we saw last year, and a lot of stuff that was like noticeably missing, like Final Fantasy VII Remake. Last of Us 2 was not there because they focused on that new side story for Uncharted with like some of the supporting characters, which, I mean, that's fine. I'm not an Uncharted fan because I haven't played them yet. But
it's not what you were
for me,
to
it was,
see.
and that opened, right. And that actually opened their show. And it's like, the rumors are that it's not even like a full game. It's more like Far Cry Blood Dragon, something along those lines, where it's like downloadable content that you don't need the original game to play, but not a fully featured, realized game that you would pay $60 for on a shelf. And then they showed Days Gone again, which was that zombie apocalypse game with the biker that, I don't know if you remember last year, but it was a lot of him just like spraying bullets into a swarm of never-ending zombies and then running from them. This showed more nuance to the gameplay, which I was glad to see.
Right.
It showed more story, and he's like on his motorcycle looking for a friend of theirs, and it turns out, I guess he's been captured by like some other people, because, hey, I don't know if you heard this, but when the zombie apocalypse happens, the real enemies are the humans, Angelo.
Oh boy, huh?
Yeah.
That was a great that was a great new concept about 5 years ago, maybe more than that by now.
Yeah, more than that. So it's that old song and dance, but it's got some good like Last of Us mechanics in there, where like he was sneaking around and stuff, and he like sets up a bear trap in a bush and then like circles around behind these people who are talking and then like throws a rock towards that bush and then someone walks over, gets hit by the trap, and so then that he calls all the other people over for help, and so while they're trying to get him out of the bear trap, you know, the character maneuvers around and everything, and you look down this ravine and see like, oh yeah, there's hundreds of zombies down there. Mm-hmm. You don't want to go there. Kind of sound his friend. And to get rid of all of the soldiers that are like on the bottom floor of this like 2-level like shack, he blows open a hole in their fence with like a C4 or something, but he hides behind a rock or something out of the way, and so when the explosion goes off, it attracts all the zombies, and so as soon as they come through that opening, they only see fresh meat right in front of them, they go for that. And then while they're all feasting on the soldiers, he sneaks up behind the whole pack and then gets his friend. That's pretty cool. I'm still not sold on it, and I don't know why. It looks real good. The facial mocap is real good. It's an interesting combination of game mechanics, but at the same time, I still don't know if it's something that I want to play.
Right. It's probably, you're going to have to see more. You're going to have to see how much of this puzzly sort of conceptual gameplay is actually there. I guess wait for the reviews, that kind of thing again. So,
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I love The Last of Us, but there's parts of it where, it just turns into a third-person cover shooter.
Yeah.
And not only are those parts not fun, but it also, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense in the context of that world where you really want to be spraying all those bullets? Because I'm pretty sure those are pretty valuable.
Not only that, you really want all that attention. You're
right.
The parts that they always showed about The Last of Us, and we're getting sidetracked, but who cares? Was always sneak around, do this weird, stuff to try to distract them and then take them down one at a time, isolate them, not, stand your ground and fire away.
Yeah. And I will say that to Days Gone credit, this does mix the zombies with the humans, where Last of Us, it was always, you're fighting the clicker, you're fighting the infected, or you're fighting humans. It was never a combination of the two. And I think maybe that might have been a limitation of the hardware, where they couldn't have those two separate types of AI routines running at the same time. That's just me theorizing, but the idea of being able to use zombies as a distraction or as a combat tactic is pretty interesting. So, we could see something special there, or it might just be, a game that sells 1 million units and then nobody cares.
Could be. We'll see.
And that's actually so, I feel that a lot of the games that have been shown at E3 so far are really good look. After, for your consideration of Game of the Year right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I worry that these games aren't going to sell and people are going to be like, oh, well, we want these, and,
You can't do that. You can't do that.
They'll just stop making them.
I really hate that whole line of reasoning. Well, if you don't buy these games, people aren't going to make games like this anymore. And it's I don't care. I just want good games. I know what you mean. I know you're not advocating for that either, but I'm just saying, I am not going to buy a game that doesn't appeal to me just because I want to see what else these people can do. That's rarely will I do that unless it's a really new concept that I want to get my hands on and actually see what it feels like. Or something just really, really out there.
My concern is more that I wonder if these people have, when they're making the games, do they have, are these Square Enix expectations where they're oh, this needs to sell 15 million units? Or do they realize, oh, we'll be real happy if this sells 1.2 million, because one of those is reasonable for a game of this caliber and one of them is not.
Yeah.
And I hope these games are being made with the latter thinking in mind and not like swinging for the fences, because not every game's going to do that. There's only so much money to spread around.
Right.
And most people wanted to spend that on Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed every year.
Yeah, and that's you can't make another Call of Duty and expect to make Call of Duty money, right? And I think this might go back to the good and with the Beyond Good and Evil thing again. They're like, well, we have to make this appeal to the Call of Duty players. You know, we have to make this to appeal to people who like Gears of War and Assassin's Creed. And it's like, they are not going to play a game with talking animals. They're
right.
I already said this.
No, but you're totally right. Yeah.
You can't. They're gonna have to learn their lessons, you know. buy good games and don't buy bad ones, and let them figure out their end, because I don't know. You know, we can't do this. we can't do their jobs for them. So.
Next up, they showed God of War. They showed some more gameplay of that, and man, it looks real pretty, and it's a welcome change to the God of War combat formula, because it looks more, you know, more Souls-ish in the sense of like you're doing combat rolls and like very deliberate attacks from enemies that are very powerful that you're trying to, you know, deal with and stuff like that. I wish I was excited for that game, but I'm just not. And I think it all boils down to playing as Kratos again. And especially here is like thematically. So like, I loved Kratos in the first two God of War games, and then he completely went off the rails for me in God of War 3, where it's like, dude, you need to, like, you literally for your vengeance. Like, that's literally the story of God of War 3, is like, by him killing these gods, like, he's throwing the world into upheaval because, you know, they're not there, but he doesn't care because he needs to get revenge. And like, he does some stuff in that third game that he doesn't need to do, but he's angry, so he has to, you know, and now he's got a kid he's raising, and like, there's talking, telling his kid that, you know, you can't think about your enemies as human. You can't, you know, show them mercy for their screams. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm really cool with Kratos, you know, talking to his kid like this, especially since he seems to acknowledge the fact that he's got issues himself. And I would just really be happier if it was like a totally new character.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I played 2 God of War games, and that was enough for me. You know, that was just how I was with it. I mean, I don't want to say they're bad, and I totally understand why people like them, but after 2 of them, I was like, okay, is this formula going to change? Next game comes out, not at all. Okay, I'm good. I don't need another one of those. So, I've never really gone back to it. Curious to see how it does.
And the formula has definitely changed. Yeah.
Oh, has it?
Oh yeah, like, that's what I'm saying. Like the actual formula for this one is like totally different. Like, the gameplay is completely new. And so I should be more excited for it on that front. But I think for me, like, you know, we're having to think about characters that we want to see on our toilet paper for an upcoming episode. Mm-hmm. And because I hate him that much by the end of God of War 3 that I never need to see him as a protagonist again, because I don't want to inhabit those boots. Like, I just don't.
Yeah, I don't. I'm still struggling with my pick for that one, but whatever. It's not. Huh. All right.
Next up, let's see. Oh, okay. They had back to back, like, the only 2 real big surprises that they had at Sony were back to back. In an example, and there's a lot of them if people are keeping track of games that I'll probably never play because people will get the most out of them. Mm-hmm. A full-on Monster Hunter game is coming to the PlayStation 4.
Oh, nice.
With PlayStation 4 graphics and all that stuff, and actual good controls, because you have more buttons available to you than, you know, on a 3DS or a PlayStation Portable.
I almost asked if that was a cross-buy with Vita, and then I was like, oh wait, Vita's dead. So.
Right. It was mentioned once during the Sony pre-show, and that was only when they announced that Undertale is coming to PlayStation 4 and Vita. So, with a physical collector's edition, I might add.
So those are already sold out by the time you told me.
Yeah. I didn't even look, but yeah, you're probably right.
Fans of that game, the minute they sniffed the possibility, they've been combing the internet for physical versions of that game since they started talking to other people about that game. Like every day, somebody just hits F5 on Amazon to see if it came up. So,
yeah. Let's see. Oh yeah, so Monster Hunter, it's called Monster Hunter World, and again, like I don't want to keep bringing the Giant Bomb guys, but this was one of my favorite parts of any of the stuff from Giant Bomb, because if you listen to the Giant Bomb cast, Jason A. Stryker, big Monster Hunter fan, but he was off camera because he's manning all of the behind the scenes stuff. But even so, you just hear him from like across the room go, "Fuck yeah!"
That's great.
So, and it's stuff like that. Like, again, it's not a game for me per se, but I know people love the Monster Hunter games, and to have it on a home console looking as good as it can with a, robust online support, like, that's awesome. And it's also cool to see Capcom ramping up in this generation, because I was getting real worried about them.
Oh, yeah?
Well, yeah, because, like, they announced like deep down when the PS4 was announced, but then that's still not out. And then, apparently Street Fighter V only exists because Sony helped them make it. And, I started to get real concerned about their future as a company, but Resident Evil 7 apparently did pretty well. And, they've got Marvel vs. Capcom coming out, and Monster Hunter seems to be doing well and stuff like that. So it seems like they're getting their footing where things were kind of rocky for a little bit. So
good.
I'm hopeful for them as a company overall, but also, happy that, we're going to get like a full on, like, I mean, cause there's been, Monster Hunter's been on the Wii and the Wii U, but this is like, top of the line graphics, right? Where Monster Hunter has always been lagging behind because of the hardware that it's been on.
Right.
So that's real nice to see. The next surprise, I'm still scratching my head over, because the reveal was very interesting because it looked like a Team Eco game.
Okay.
Like it just had that aesthetic to it, right? Like it looked like Team Eco, architecture and stuff like that, Team Eco lighting. And it's like, oh wow, that's interesting. And then it turns out it is a Team Eco game.
Huh.
It's Shadow of the Colossus.
Oh.
But it's Shadow of the Colossus. Like, it's not Shadow of the Colossus 2.
Right. No, I got you.
It's Shadow of the, yeah. And they definitely did something to it, because it's not the PS3 HD version of it. They've put some work into it, but I don't understand why.
Yeah, who's that? It's another who is this for type of things. It's like, what? Yeah. Play this game another time on another piece of hardware for reasons. Like, I get the last remake. That makes sense to me. This one doesn't.
Yeah, and like, you could just up-res that collection and throw it on the PS4. Like, They did that with, like, Final Fantasy X HD collection, right? Like, that's fine. I don't know like, again, it was a short trailer. They didn't show any stage demo of it, so it's hard to say. Like, if it ends up running perfectly well, and you're like, holy crap, this looks like a brand new game now. Maybe there's something to it. I would be more excited if they said, oh, those 5 Colossi that we had originally planned for but didn't implement the game, then they're now.
Oh, wow.
Like, but it's not Team Eco working on this. It's some other company.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're just basically cranking out the old game again.
That was weird. Yeah. Oh, and I'm sorry. Oh, I'm not that sorry, because it was such a forgettable press conference. I forgot that Bethesda was in there somewhere. It was a 40-minute press conference with 5 minutes of new stuff. I'm not even kidding.
The Bethesda conference?
They showed off. Yeah. They only showed one new game, and that was Wolfenstein 2, which I thought the trailer was real bad, but the game looked real good.
So no Doom stuff, huh?
Doom VR.
So no Doom stuff, huh?
No. They showed off Doom VR, but it's called Doom VFR. Guess what the F stands for?
Freaking R.
And Fallout 4 VR. Yeah. Doom VR is still doing the like teleporting around that you have to do in VR, and I'm like, no, not for Doom.
Maybe it plays. Maybe it plays. Yeah.
Maybe, but here's the funny thing. The only reason that I bring up Bethesda, because you would think, and the reason that because Patrick and I, we waited until late on Sunday to record because we were like, what's coming on real late, but maybe they're going to announce something big, new Elder Scrolls, and I would hate to record and then that happen while we're recording, right?
Oh yeah.
No, there's no new Elder Scrolls, but they will sell you Skyrim 6 ways to Sunday.
I guess.
Because not only do they show the Switch version, which now has motion controls.
Why?
Because Switch.
Yeah. Because
Nintendo will not let it die. I mean, the motion controls. The Switch is doing fine, but let the motion controls die. But they also announced the Sony press conference, and that's why I thought about it just now. Skyrim. So, yeah.
And what?
I understand people really love that game, but that game came out in 2011. Let it go.
So, let's go back to the teleporting thing, because we've already discussed how moving around in VR is a problem. How does this work in Skyrim VR? You just gonna puke?
So, what little they showed of Skyrim and Fallout seemed to be full-on movement in VR, and I don't know how that's supposed to work. I will say that, Skyrim, you see your character's hands, but they're, disembodied hands, which I hate that for VR. I like the games like Batman, where you see they modeled a whole body. But on Fallout VR, it's just your weapon floating in midair, and it looks real weird, and it's also got that shakiness that is inherent to VR because you're holding the controller and it's picking it up exaggerated because it has to. Yeah. And it's I would hope that they would solve that for Fallout and Skyrim, and if not, then somebody needs to solve that very soon. But yeah, I can't I like to star for an hour, and then I like to take it off. I can't imagine trying to do that for 800 hours in a Bethesda RPG.
Right.
So, and I had told Patrick, I was like, well, if it's a free add-on for the PlayStation 4 version, I'll give it a go. But Patrick was like, they're going to sell that to you, and I was like, yeah, and I'm not interested if they want to sell it to me.
Right.
And maybe that's a shitty way of looking at it because it's a lot of work to change that into VR, right? But if I already own the game, I own the game. But at the same time, maybe this is a totally different version of the game. I don't know. There's a lot of unanswered questions with those.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's developing. It's newly developed tech. So
yes. A
lot of this is still figuring out how we're going to use it. Very interesting.
Yeah. And, Sony had some Destiny 2 stuff, which, it's Destiny 2.
Yeah.
It is what it is. It looks real, people love that game, and I think people will love Destiny 2. And I might be missing some stuff, but I'm just talking about the major stuff that stood out to me. They closed with, the first actual gameplay footage of Spider-Man, which is that Insomniac game. And that looks real damn good.
Oh, good.
It's very Batman Arkham Asylum in the sense that, they showed a straight up stealth section where Spider-Man is like in the rafters and like webbing up guys and suspending them from the rafters and pouncing on them to do silent takedowns, and then getting into rhythmic combat with a group of guys where he's bouncing from, you know, enemy to enemy and doing backflips, and like all the animation looked real good. Like, you know, it's if you said, hey, I want a Spider-Man game done in the vein of Batman Arkham Asylum, if you picture that in your head, that's what they made. Like,
that's cool.
It does that real good.
Yeah. I mean, they already pretty much gave
Batman. Things are interesting.
So they already pretty much gave Batman Spider-Man Spider Sense. Like, that's how they did the combat. So I guess that's already there.
Yeah. Where things get a little interesting, like it doesn't, but they get into a storyline segment where Spider-Man, he's like web swinging, he's trying to like chase after this guy in a helicopter, and it goes real quick time heavy.
Oh.
Like super duper, like I'm talking about like in the last few minutes of the gameplay demo, like maybe 7 or 8 sequences with it. Like we're talking a lot of different button prompts, and it begs the question, like, okay, so what happens if you mess up on those button prompts? Like, what happens? Like, is it a fail? Like, do you have to do all of that again? Like, what's going on here? Like, can you miss some of them? Does it matter if you miss? Like, does it just keep playing itself? Like, very interesting tact, because like I don't think I've ever seen Insomniac use any of that in their other games. And you certainly don't do stuff like that in the Arkham games, at least not to this degree. So that's interesting. And then apparently, like, I know you're not a comic book fan, Angelo,
I don't hate them.
They also, but they revealed after the conference that apparently this is Miles Morales' Spider-Man, not Peter Parker.
Oh.
So that's a bold choice. And it's one that I'm all for. But if it's Miles Spider-Man, I would really rather he had his costume from his books, because I think it's a cooler looking costume than what Insomniac made up for this game. So that does it for Sony, which leads into today, which was Nintendo in the morning.
Okay.
They scaled so far back.
Who did? Nintendo?
And like from the old days, like, you know, because at first they used to, like, back in the day, like they had, you know, your typical hour-long press conference where Reggie was on stage and you had Iwata and you had Miyamoto and Aonuma doing their stuff and showing off games, and it was awkward but funny and whatever. And then they started doing the Nintendo Directs, and, you know, but you had like a good solid like 45-minute to an hour-long Nintendo Direct that showed you just like game after game after game, and there was a little bit of humor in there, and it was really good. This one was 30 minutes. But they made a lot of people, not me, very happy. And I say that like just because like I feel, again, like with Sony,
so
it was very safe.
Let me guess. You're saying they made a lot of people happy. A lot of people happy. So that means there's a new Pokemon.
They didn't show it, but they did officially confirm that they are working on a core Pokemon title for the Switch.
All right. How many things do I have to guess?
I mean, keep going until you've exhausted it.
Oh, they're already working on the new Mario, so that can't be it. Zelda just happened. They probably showed a little bit more about like the DLC for Zelda, I'd imagine.
They did, but still not a lot of answers. They announced the name of the second DLC, which is something Ballad of something, and it seems to be story based and based around the Guardian, the Guardian Beast pilots.
Oh,
but no explanation on what it actually is.
All right,
or what you're gonna do.
Well, I was curious a little bit more about them, so that's kind of neat. I mean, my kids are going to get it. I know they are. So, F-Zero?
No.
I didn't think so. Just throwing that out there. Gotta have like
Sure.
a wild guess. Fire Emblem?
Yes.
Okay.
Both the Fire Emblem Warriors, which is, Dynasty Warriors with Fire Emblem. And then I think after, because, the thing with Nintendo at E3 now is that they'll show you stuff at the Direct, but then throughout the day at the Treehouse, they're announcing other stuff. So They also officially showed, I think footage of Fire Emblem for the Switch, which had already been announced, but I think they showed it off at some point.
Oh, you know what? I'll bet there's a new Kirby. I think we're about due for a new Kirby, aren't we?
Yep.
Okay.
Just called Kirby. And it's coming in 2018. It's a side-scrolling platformer with polygonal graphics. It looks like it's going for like a 4-player mode. So yes, that's one.
All right.
You can probably throw it in that vein and it'll stick.
Anything?
When you think about Kirby.
Oh, okay.
Well, think about Kirby and where he sits in the Nintendo hierarchy. And then you can probably throw out another name and you'll probably be right.
Well, Yoshi.
Yep.
Okay. I thought we just had a Yoshi, but okay.
Also a side-scrolling platformer.
Yep.
But this one, instead of wool-based, it's cardboard-based. Like, everything's made out of cardboard, and he can go, in and out of the environments, and it actually flips the whole level when he does that. So when you go behind a cardboard house, and it'll flip it around, and then you see from the back view, and he's still throwing the eggs like he does in the Yoshi's Island games, but now instead of doing up and down, you're actually throwing them into the foreground and background.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Huh.
Yeah, it looked nice, but I find it very interesting that Nintendo seems to be going back to a 2D plane for a lot of their games in the last few years, where I kind of want to go forward. And Casey was saying this today. He was like, why haven't they done a 3D Kirby yet? A full-on 3D Kirby adventure? Because, you could do some real interesting stuff with that particular character in that game style.
I think Kirby is their keep it simple game.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think that's where they play Kirby real safe. What is the most approachable game we can make? And those are the Kirby, maybe the Yoshi ones too, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They want those to be baby's first game could be this, I guess. No offense to people that like those. I'm just saying they want that to be the most approachable game that they can make. So.
Yeah, I can see that.
You already said there's a new Xeno game.
Yes, they actually kicked off their presentation with that. The art style looks so different from the other two games that originally I thought it was Baten Kaitos 3.
Oh, wow.
It's very anime. And when I say anime, I mean kid with big anime eyes and funky hair and oversized weapon anime. Yeah. But it's funny because when I was waiting in line forever to not play Mario Odyssey at E3, they were showing footage of it on the Treehouse feed, and every time I would look up, that game looked different. I was like, whoa, what's that? Oh, it's still Xenoblade. And I would look down at my phone and look back. I was like, whoa, what's that? Oh, it's Xenoblade.
That's interesting.
So there's a lot of variety in that game. So, it's going to scratch a certain itch, but it definitely plays more like a Tales game. It's going more action heavy than even the last Xenoblade did.
All right, good. I got it, because I actually think that's a good direction for that to move. I want I don't know. It sounds crazy. I want it to be. It feels like it wants to be an action game, but it can't commit to it. Every single one of those games that I played has felt that way. Whereas when I play Kingdom Hearts, I feel like this is just a junky mess that wants to be turn-based. You know what I mean? It feels like they're both pulling in opposite directions, and I feel like a better home for Xenoblade is to be more action, and a better home for Kingdom Hearts is to be more, a little more leaning toward the turn-based. So.
Yeah.
But,
Definitely.
Balloon Fight makes a comeback. No.
No, something is making a comeback though.
Oh. How retro are we talking here? Are we talking like Ice Climbers? Are we talking like freaking...
Oh, you just hit the nail on the head.
I did?
When you said retro. Yes.
Retro game. Metroid?
Yes.
They are making a new Metroid?
They're making Metroid Prime 4 for the Switch.
Oh, but but also, I kind of wanted to, well, I will play a Metroid Prime 4. I will enjoy a Metroid Prime 4. Make no mistake, I really wanted a 2D one though. And I hate to say that. I'm just glad Metroid's alive. I'm happy Metroid's alive, and I will probably love. Metroid Prime has laid fallow for long enough where I feel like I want to see what they're going to do with that. They have had so much time to think of a new Metroid game that I have pretty high hopes for it. As far as like being interesting, especially if they're going to throw 4. Like it's definitely like 4. If you're going to give it a new number, that tells me you're not going back to the well. You know, this isn't a reboot. This is a continuation after 3. So that's cool. All
they showed was a logo.
No, so it could be a Metroid Dread all over again.
I'm not sure. Like, I think there's more to it than that. But I get to be Oprah Winfrey for you now, Angelo.
Okay.
Because you get a 2D Metroid.
I do?
Also, because they are remaking Metroid 2 on the 3DS.
Oh, sweet. Oh, I want that. I want that real bad.
Yeah, which totally explains why we're so quick to shut down that fan-made remake of that game. Like, you would think, like, why don't you just, like, publish this? But it's because they were already working on a polygonal like a 2.5D version of Metroid 2 for the 3DS. So.
Oh, man. I am stoked for that.
Yeah.
I wonder how, I want to find out. Did they have anything more to show on that?
They did, but I haven't seen the footage yet. So when I was watching Nintendo this morning, like I said, my Wi-Fi here in the hotel is real bad, and it cut off literally right when Reggie was saying that they had one more thing to show, and then I couldn't get the feedback, and I was like, well, it probably wasn't anything major. And then I get to the show, and it's like, they're remaking Metroid 2 for 3DS. What I'd be most excited about from that whole presentation.
That's great. So basically what you'll have is like timeless versions of Metroid 1 and Metroid. Like all the Metroid games now have essentially timeless editions of them because Metroid 1 was impossible to go back to, but they did Zero Mission. And now Metroid 2, I wouldn't say it's impossible to go back to, but I am sure
it's real.
I'm sure it's rough, right?
Yeah. Especially with it being designed for the black and white Game Boy screen. Like even if you play that on like a Super Game Boy or on a Game Boy Color, like it wasn't optimized for that at all. So it's still very hard to like, see what's going on.
I would still argue that because of the way it's structured, it would be easier to go back to than the first Metroid, but at the same time it needed to be so you can basically get really good. Oh man. I like this.
I mean, I'd like to see them do something with Super Metroid.
Sure.
I don't know what, but yeah, like.
But it doesn't need it. I could put my kids in front of Super Metroid right now, and they could play it and enjoy it because there's indie games coming out that feel just like it. You know what I mean? So.
And I guess it's on like all the virtual consoles for everything they've released. Yeah. So you have ways to play it.
Yeah. And maybe it'll be. Did they say anything about the micro whatever they were talking about? Like any new, what was freaking NES Classic? Did they say anything about that? Like plans for that?
No.
Okay.
No, they didn't. And that makes sense because I think when they announced the NES Classic last year, it was a quick turnaround. Like they announced it and then it was on store shelves like a month or two later.
Right.
So I would imagine if they're doing that this year, it's going to be the same type of thing. And then So it's funny because like they still seem real committed to the 3DS because obviously you have that Metroid game. But when I was waiting in line at the show today, they also announced a remake of Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga.
No kidding.
Yeah, for 3DS, and it's real good. And they also added a new scenario where you're actually playing as the Goombas and Koopas trying to find Bowser, and it seems like a weird pseudo strategy game, but strategy in the sense that you have like two like warring parties that are kind of clashing with each other, and you have like limited input of like, I want you to defend, or I want you to like rush them now, or, you know, like use your special abilities, like that type of thing. Like very, very basic, but, you know, it looked pretty entertaining. So
yeah. I almost asked, and I don't know if this means anything to you, if you could hear the music for Xenoblade, but probably not on the show floor.
Not on the, no. Now, what they were playing on the show floor, was like, cause Nintendo's whole booth is structured around Mario Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were playing a lot of tracks from the Mario Odyssey soundtrack.
Okay.
And that is a damn good soundtrack, Angelo.
Oh, good. What do you have to tell me about New Donk City? Let's hear about this.
I can't tell you anything about New Donk City.
Aw.
I can't tell you anything about any of the games at E3. Because I didn't play game 1.
Wow. So this whole open to the public thing, not working so well?
No, not at all. So like, you know, they let 20,000 people in, and I remember hearing that number and thinking, oh, that'll be fine, because I remember back in the old days, like when it was at its highest, and like you had about 6,000 people there or 70,000 people there, it was fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that there had been like a significant decrease in attendees over the years since, because the last time I went was in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no. Like, I have never seen it like this. Like, so traditionally, like before they open the doors, everybody lines up at the door for the West Hall, because that's where Nintendo is, and everybody likes to go to Nintendo first, right? Makes sense.
Right.
Usually, like in previous years, and for the listeners who don't know, I went from 2002 to 2004, which are considered like the crazy years. That's like when it was at its peak, right? That's when you had booth babes everywhere, and the swag bags and giveaways, and, you know, like every game playable on the floor pretty much, like that era.
Right.
And I went back in 2010 and saw how much it had changed, in the sense that like very few of the games were hands-on. A lot of them were just like wait in line to go into a theater to watch the developer play the demo for you and tell you about it. So now, it's very much like wait in line for a demonstration, but also it's wait in line for everything. So anyway, so waiting in line for the doors to open in the morning, at West Hall. It used to be, and so like, it's a big area, right? And so you have these doors, and there's like there's like an escalator going upstairs to the meeting rooms. And so people would like line up at the doors. They kind of fill up the area below the escalator, and then a little bit past the escalator. Like, I would say probably halfway down that hallway. And I know you don't have, you know, concept of like space or anything like that, because it's a radio show, but that's how it used to be. Today, that line went from doors all the way down into the South Hall, which is across the convention center. It was insane. And then the funny thing is that once they opened the doors, like, it was kind of just free for all anyway. Like, you didn't really have to have waited in that line. But, you know, Casey, our fellow writer, was at the show too, and I couldn't get to him, like where he was in line. I tried to get to him and I couldn't. But even so, I still ended up about 3 people behind him in the line for Mario Odyssey. But, oh man, I'm so upset. So the last time that I went to Nintendo was for Skyward Sword. And they had a bunch of different games set up. I mean, Skyward Sword was one of the big ones. I waited in line for like maybe 2 hours to play it, but that was like late in the day one day.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just kind of like, oh, I guess I'll try Skyward Sword, even though I'm not a Zelda fan. Like it wasn't a big deal. But all of the kiosks they were cordoned off. They basically each had little lines with dividers between them. It was very well orchestrated. Each kiosk had a Nintendo representative, making sure that the demo was running smoothly, making sure that people were moving on once they were done. This now was just like very informal, like lines in quotations, but more of a mass of people.
Uh-oh.
And the demo for Mario Odyssey, well, one Nintendo guy said it was 10 minutes long. I swear it was longer than that. Because I waited in line for an hour and a half and never moved up one spot.
Wow.
And I had to leave because, like, I was wearing, like, when I go to E3, I've always treated it like a business conference, right? Like, it's like the only place that I don't show my gamerness. Like, I don't wear my fanboy shirts to E3.
Right.
Like, I always go on the first day in, like, a full suit. And then the second day I lose the jacket, and then the third day I go in like a tucked in polo shirt, right? I was like, there were so many people that I was dying, and I had to get out of the line. And the thing is that I looked behind me, and I was still in the back of the line because like people got tired of waiting and would just leave.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm literally in the back of the line. I haven't moved. And I told Casey, like, hey, I gotta go. And I went to walk around the show floor. An hour and 45 minutes after that, Casey finally played the game and was able to meet up with me.
Wow.
He said it was real good. But during that hour and 45 minutes, I walked the whole show floor and, like, just lines everywhere for everything. And it's very interesting, right? The reason that I went to this E3 is because I needed to see what it would be like with them letting the public in. And it's clear to me that they were not prepared for it. And also, nobody's having fun, right? Because I'm listening to people talking. It's like the people who are there for business are like upset, right? Like they don't like the extra crowds, you know, like they don't know why this is happening. The people who are attending as attendees like me are not having a good time. You know, like apparently Sony's booth is by like, you have to download their app and then sign up for appointments for demos of games.
Whew.
And some of those are playable and some of those are just theater appointments, which is like how the press used to operate back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's literally Sony representatives walking around with signs saying, how do I get in line? Because you can't just get in line. And like, so I was like, okay, well, let me look around, and I went to Square Enix's booth because I love Final Fantasy stuff. And they had like, I probably could have played Dissidia NT, but I don't care about Dissidia, so whatever. It looks pretty. But for some reason, Square Enix is publishing Agents of Mayhem, which is, you know, that's a game I very much wanted to play. And I was like, hey, cool. Like, there's only like one person at each of these kiosks. You know, I'll wait until they're done. And then I was informed that side is for press only. And on the other side was for everybody else. And of course, there was like a line of like 7 people on each console. And it's like, that's not how it used to operate back in the day. Back in the day, like, you could just walk up and go play stuff. But if somebody was with its press, they would cut in line, right? But so what you have now is that certain booths are just set up to where, oh no, we've got these reserved for press, even if there's no press there. And then the other side is for the plebs. And so I literally, like, one of the kiosks for Agents of Mayhem was not, like, nobody was playing it. But I couldn't walk up and play that game because I wasn't press. And I feel that was like, that might be like, a collective way of the company saying F you to letting, you know, the public in. And like making it even more difficult. And like Sega did that too. Like Casey wanted to play like that Sonic Forces, but it was press only unless you went, you know, and sat in this other line. But I wanted to try that Dragon Ball game at the Bandai Namco booth, and they had a bunch of console setup for this. I mean, I would probably say about 12.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, well, let me see where the line starts or line ends. And I'm like looking, I was like, oh, that's not too bad. And I was like, oh, wait, no, that's not. Oh. And I walked around the booth and around the booth. And the line was longer than my lines to play Skyward Sword back in 2010.
Oof.
And I was like, no, that's all right. I made a mistake. I made a terrible mistake.
By coming, you think?
I had a terrible time.
Oh.
And also like I'm in a suit and I'm sweltering and I had to like ditch my tie at some point and like couldn't get close to play a game. Like now I never even got close. And like Casey only played, and then he actually ended up leaving because he had actually worked. The reason he's not recording with us tonight, he had worked a full night shift and then came to the show. So like once he waited in line for like 3 hours and played Mario, he was pretty much done.
Yeah.
He'll be back tomorrow, but yeah, I ended up leaving at like 3, even though the show didn't close until 6, because I was like, there's no point. I'm not gonna play anything. And also like with the public comes the merch, which has never been a thing at E3. Like there's always a E3 merchandise booth for like E3 themed t-shirts and stuff like that. But now we're talking about Loot Crate is there and like this shop selling geek shirts and like Sony actually outside selling a bunch of like exclusive Sony merchandise, but there was always a line going all the way to the cash register outside the booth, like wrapping around the booth. And I was like, I am not waiting in line to buy a t-shirt. Like, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, that's no.
Yeah.
Oof.
So, yeah.
Well, maybe they'll fix it next time. I don't know. What about like?
Yeah.
I got 2 questions for you. One is, what about influencers in quotes? Because I'm not sure what else we call them. How are they? What is there? Are they just like regular general public here? Because I mean, they're getting kind of like top billing at these conferences. It sounds like. So.
I think it depends on their status. Like, I've seen some people that I realize are influencers because like they're just regular looking dudes with usually they've got like a Canon camera with like a Rode microphone attached to it, and you'll see like a handful of people like, oh, I like your show or whatever. Some of them have legit, like actual media badges. And then some of them have like the regular expo badge like I have. There is one guy who, like I guess he has a channel. He was like in line for the longest time at Mario. And that's how I knew the line wasn't moving, because he had a Yoshi hat on. And like, I was like, he's still in this line. He hasn't played the game yet. And then when he finally played the game, he actually stood to the side while his friend played the game. And then he was taking like video like off the camera, which why would you even do that in this day and age when you have like direct feed everywhere? Like that, we used to do that back in 2002 because like that footage wasn't going to come out for months.
Right.
A way to put it online. So yeah, it just kind of depends. But you definitely see them walking around where, you know, they're like walking around with their selfie sticks or, you know, like showing the crowds and stuff and being really excited about being there. Cause YouTubers have to talk like this all the time. Yeah. What was your other question?
When you were over at the Square Enix booth, did they have anything that wasn't previously announced, or was it all just kind of as expected?
As expected,
okay. And
actually surprisingly heavy on Stormblood, the new Final Fantasy XIV expansion.
Yeah.
Which is literally coming out like next week. So that was interesting. Like a large part of their booth is set up with like computers to play, you know, in the new Stormblood areas. Surprising the number of kiosks for Dissidia. They only had Final Fantasy XII HD on like maybe 4 screens.
See, now that's what I would have wanted to play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it's like that's coming out in July, and I have it pre-ordered. Like, for me, it was enough just to look at it. I'm like, okay,
Right.
that looks real damn good. So, like, I'm glad that I pre-ordered that. I'm really surprised that they're publishing the Agents of Mayhem, and so that might be something that I try to go and actually play tomorrow, because I feel like it's enough under the radar that not everybody is going to try to play it, but even so, it's like anybody, like Angelo, I almost played, what is it? What is that embarrassing game that you reviewed one time? Kengan Sagara
Senran Kagura, I think it's pronounced.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
just, yeah, it's fan service the game.
Yes. They have one at the show, and it's fan service for the fan service, because it's like, has to do with the beach and everybody's in bikinis. I almost played that just because there wasn't a lot of people in line for it, but I just can't. Like, there's certain things that I don't want to see I don't want people to see me doing in public, and that's one of them. So,
I have heard, now mind you, the people that are talking about this game may not be giving me the honest, opinion on it, that is actually a good game. Like, aside, even if it wasn't for the skin factor, that game would actually be a pretty solid game. But, I don't know.
It very well could be.
I also just,
yeah.
I mean, I don't want to, I hate when I say like, oh, but I would never, because it kind of sounds like I'm taking a dump on people that are like those games. And I don't want to necessarily do that. It's just not for me. Like,
no, and I mean, I love fan service. Like,
sure.
I love big jumbly boobies that are defying physics. Like,
yep.
I'm not embarrassed about that, but it's like, I want to play that game at home with my pants down. Like, I don't want to be seen in public playing it. That's the quote from this episode.
It sure is. Oh my goodness.
By the way, I am actually recording this pantsless because I'm so exhausted and hot and tired from the day. Oh my gosh. So.
Dude, it was so freaking hot up here this past weekend. Like, we were camping. I know this isn't the camping podcast, but I gotta tell you, like, it was chilly all week long, and then we get to the campsite and we unpack everything. It's like somebody cranked the oven up the next day. So, great trip. We had a great, wonderful vacation. I mean, it cooled off. We were able to sleep, but, we went kayaking at one point. We're out in the middle of this lake in these kayaks, and it's just like, and we thought this was a good idea. Why? So.
Yeah. And I mean, the weather here is really nice. Like, it's in the 70s, and I'm from Texas where it's been in the 90s. So, yeah. But I was in a full suit and surrounded by people, and literally, like, I would just go to the commissary and grab handfuls of napkins to put into my bag so that I could wipe myself down periodically, because I was just just sweating up a storm.
Yeah. It was 90s where I was. So.
Oh yeah. That's yeah. Oh, especially for you, that's pretty intense.
Well, it was our first couple of days that were this hot, honestly, and it's supposed to kind of cool back down now. We just had a couple of really scorching days when we were out there.
Yeah.
So,
couple of things I'll say. So both Final Fantasy and Street Fighter are celebrating their 30th anniversaries this year. Square Enix at their booth has their banner that says Final Fantasy 30th anniversary that, everybody has seen. Mm-hmm. That's it. Capcom has this glorious history of Street Fighter wall at their booth with screens set up for Street Fighter 1, Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter Alpha 1, Street Fighter 3, Street Fighter 4, and Street 5. And next to them it has the release date and a little bit about the game, and it's just running, and the whole wall is done with this big Street Fighter 30th anniversary, and I thought that was so awesome. And
I want to see that.
Damn Square. Yeah, I took a picture of it and I'll post it on Twitter, but it's I wish that Square would show that type of love to their flagship franchise, because that was really cool to see. And I almost waited in line to get Ono's autograph, because he was actually signing autographs at the Capcom booth. But hey, guess what? There's a lot of people lined up to get his autograph.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm just really curious to see that. Like, I want to hear what Square's up to now that the new Nier game was actually a hit. Like, what's next? Because now that it's a hit, Square's actually going to pay attention, and that kind of has me excited.
Yeah, and they didn't. I was surprised they didn't do a press conference this year, and I thought that they would announce like maybe the next Tomb Raider game or something along those lines, and they didn't. And they really didn't announce anything Final Fantasy Dissidia NT got leaked.
Right.
So I guess that was like the one thing that they had, but I was really expecting more from them. And honestly, I know it was up high in the sky, but I thought that there might be at least an announcement of Final Fantasy 16 and nothing else. Like say, hey, we're making it. But, not even that.
They're out there storyboarding it, I'm sure. They're not going to let that series sleep for too long.
Yeah. Well, and then even the Enix side, right? Like Dragon Quest 11 is looking real flippin' good, and I thought that would have been at the show, and nope, not even a mention of it. So
right. Well, they have that whole Thief thing that they just announced too, and I'm sure they didn't have anything of that.
No,
because that's theirs now, I guess.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Anyway. Yeah, I don't have it. I don't. I love Square. I do, but I don't think that the IDOS thing. I mean, they weren't IDOS when they bought them, but you know what I mean. Like that whole merger, I don't think Tomb Raider is the only thing that came out of that alive, really, as it turns out.
Yeah.
So, and even that's not the Tomb Raider it was before. It's totally different. So.
It is, but I actually prefer it. I think those two games are real good.
I do too. But that's the thing is, like, I don't understand. Like, they're clearly trying to do that with all of those, and it worked for Deus Ex, and it worked for Tomb Raider, and I think they thought they could do the same with Thief, but Thief is not at all that type of game. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to attract new people by switching it up, and you're going to turn off the fans that want a Thief game. So, we'll see. We'll see what they do. They did announce another game in a movie, so.
Yeah.
Do we have anything else?
It's also weird when, I was going to say, it's weird when, because, like, they had a video screen set up, like, showing a lot of trailers for their and everything at Square, and I still really, they show their old stuff on the same as their home console stuff, like, so I'm like, what are they doing right now? And I'm like, oh, this is some nice artwork, and it's like, oh, this is a trailer for content for Brave Exvius on the phone.
Right.
And I'm like, I tried, I know what they wanted to do with that game, but it's like, I wish that they had just put more development into it and released it for like the 3DS and the Vita, but I also know that wouldn't make them as much money as what they're making, because apparently it's doing really well for them. They're making tons of bank on their mobile stuff, but
yeah, I'm not going to get anywhere near that stuff either. I keep looking at it going, ooh, Square made a mobile game. And I did try the last one, and I played it for, you know what I mean. We're going to be, I played the last one a little bit, and then it was just like, yeah, that was fun, and I'm done with it. And they don't stick with me. Very few mobile games really stick with me. At least the ones that go for that free-to-play model. So. Uh-oh. Did the call fall apart? What's that?
A little bit. Yeah. I think I have to wrap this up.
Yeah. I don't know what happened anymore.
Yeah. Well, I guess Patrick didn't make it.
That's all right.
Maybe we'll try to do something or I'll try to do something with him later in the week, or this might be it for E3, because I'm feeling pretty disillusioned with it at the moment.
Well, we didn't really go into it expecting it to be amazing, so I'm surprised by the Metroid thing.
I honestly went in not knowing what to expect, even though this is the fifth show, but I was not expecting this. I expected there to be some lines, but not lines around every booth for every single game. And the booths are structured in such a way, like, so for example, like at Ubisoft, I switch back and forth. Like, the Fractured But Whole is on a handful of games, like on the end, like the edge of their booth, but it's cordoned off by a bunch of barriers, and I couldn't find out where the lines began and ended. And a lot of the booths are set up that way, and I don't know if they all poorly implemented crowd control at the last minute to try to mitigate things, or if they were designed with a much smaller group in mind. Because it is almost impossible to tell where lines begin and end, for every booth. And it's real bad. It's real bad. So. Oh, and also, I forgot. So, you know, what they added for, the normies like me was they added panels, which E3 typically does not have.
Right.
And it's at a separate area, called the Novo. And, you know, I was looking on the E3 app and I'm like, okay, there's a handful today that I'd like to check out. You know, there was one at 5 for, Xbox One X. And then after that was like Tim Schafer talking to Jack Black about Brutal Legend. But I was leaving early. I was like, well, let me check out whatever's running right now. But unlike other conventions where you kind of just go and sit if there's room, you have to have pre-checked in, which they didn't tell you. Which I had not done, and I couldn't really, I was so frustrated by that point that I didn't actually ask any questions about how it was actually supposed to work. I might do that tomorrow, but it seems like at the beginning of the day, you need to wait in a long line to go check in for things later in the day so that you can go and sit down. And it's not just if there's room, you can go and sit and watch this panel. So. That is also a big bummer because I would have watched we wouldn't have been recording this because I would have ended up staying late to watch those panels, but yeah, that didn't happen for me either. So
wow,
kind of a disappointment on every front.
Kind of want to see what they're gonna do next year, just to see, because this obviously didn't work the way they wanted it to, probably.
Yeah, I will be very surprised if they do this again next year. And if so, I'll be curious to see if people bite, because I can't imagine people coming from this saying, oh, I had the best time.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the old days, for context, and I don't want to sound like the cranky old man, but back at E3 2002, I played Mario Sunshine, Metroid Prime, and Zelda the Wind Waker, easily. All of them. Yeah. Played them. And I played Eternal Darkness because that looked weird and I hadn't heard of it. I was like, oh, I'll give this a go because it's just open. And then in 2010, I played Skyward Sword and I played Metroid the Other M at the Nintendo booth. And I waited in line for 2 hours for Zelda and about an hour for Metroid. And I think all told that year I played probably about 6 games. And I can't imagine your average person attending the show playing more than 1 or 2 games for the entirety of the show.
Right.
Because I just don't know how you do it. I mean, that Mario line was not moving. I can't impress upon people enough that line did not go anywhere while I was there. And it's not that they didn't have a lot of stations set up. They've got a ton of Mario Odyssey at that Nintendo booth, but everybody, I would say those 20,000 people that they let in all wanted to be there.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Well.
Yep.
I guess that's it. E3. It's E3.
Yep. Yeah.
Better luck next year.
Yeah, I've already decided that I probably won't be going back, if it's open to the public. But I mean, that's fine. I've been to the show enough times and I think that, I just needed to know. And unless I were getting in as some credential like media or something like that again, and I've done that once, that might be a different story. But as it is, it's a rough one. Oh, there's Patrick.
Hey.
That's funny. Guess we'll wrap up.
Okay.
I feel bad now. He literally just got online.
Well, if you wanna hang out and I don't even know.
Yeah, I guess we can get him on and get his hot takes on stuff if he cuts in real quick. There's no editing going in the show, so it's just going to be a beautiful nightmare.
Cool.
Let's see. I'll just vamp for a little bit. Yesterday, I couldn't check into my hotel until 7 hours after I arrived, because I didn't see like when the check-in time was, so I had to like entertain myself for the day. So I took the Metro Rail, and I love the public transportation in LA. Like coming from Austin, where there's no public transportation, it's so nice. But I just took the train to Universal City Walk and around and went to go see Wonder Woman for a second time because I needed to kill some time, and did some gift shopping and ate lunch, and that was cool. Like, I love the fact that I could just like get on the train and then go there.
Right.
Like Universal Studios, just get on the train and go. And in Austin that would be, well, if we had something like that across town, it's like,
right.
Well, that's just going to take an hour.
Yeah, I mean, there's no public transportation where I live, but there's not enough demand for it. Like, even Albany has nothing, which is kind of surprising since it's the capital. But then, of course, you go down to New York City and, man, nobody owns a car down there, at least nobody with any sense. Because you've got the subway, you've got the subway. That's all you really need. A subway and a bike, maybe. So.
Yeah, I think if I lived in LA, I probably wouldn't own a car. Or if I did, I would only use it for like grocery shopping because the train is just so convenient. It gets you pretty much anywhere that you'd want to go.
Yeah.
And, I paid $25 for a 7-day pass. So that's like all my transportation for the week. I'm even going to take the train back to the airport on Friday. I took a cab from the airport, and that was a mistake because I didn't realize that there's a Metro Rail station close to the airport. I should have known better.
Yeah.
So that was like a $60 cab ride, but it's going to be a free ride back.
Yeah. I mean, there's always buses. They probably have a bus thing, but if you don't know that system, you don't just like run into that as an outsider usually.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I feel comfortable getting on the train because it's all color coded and everything, and I'll get where I'm going eventually, even if I get on the wrong train initially. Because once you have your pass, you just hop train after train.
I mean, you could do that in New York too, but I don't know if you really want to do that if you go to New York City. And that's a little harder to read, that system, probably, because there's way more there. So.
Yeah.
Let's
see. I'm gonna message him real quick and see, like, he might. Oh, there he is.
There he goes.
Did it?
Hey.
Hello, friends.
Hey. Turn.
Don't bother with the camera. Yeah.
Patrick, because my connection is terrible out here.
Okay, yeah, I hear some roboting when I turned it on.
Yeah.
Oh, you have no idea.
We were actually wrapping up because we ended up covering just about everything, but I'd love to get your hot takes on I guess mostly Nintendo, but also Sony, because that's, you've got the biggest dog in that hunt. And I was curious to see what you thought about that stuff before we take off.
Yeah, well, I thought I was right. Man, it was great to see Metroid Prime there. And I mean, I loved all 4 Mario games, or, Yoshi is basically Mario, but the XCOM Mario was a big highlight for me. I can't believe that Ubisoft kicked up their whole conference with them, and
Right?
Like it showed like such a big partnership with Nintendo, and I feel like everybody's on board now, especially with like the Rocket League customizations that they announced, and there's just so much to play in the next year with the Switch, and 2 years with Kirby and the Pokemon RPG, that it's just like I don't know what else I need there. I pretty much saw like everything that I wanted to see. Like 2 Metroid games, it's crazy. I think that the entire conference went overboard with the amount of games that they showed off per second. You know, it was way higher than normal, and most time you didn't see anybody on stage like making any flubs or forgetting their words like I'm doing right now. But it was great to see like the Nintendo Treehouse, and I think they're going to even have some more surprises the next couple days, because it said it was running all 3 days or 3 days in a row. So I'm really excited to see how the DLC works from Legend of Zelda, especially that second one where they got those 4 amiibo that all look really sweet. And I really don't know what else I could have asked for besides maybe a little bit more AAA support for the Switch, or maybe like the Advance Wars type game that we could have got with touchpad support or whatever you call it.
Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah, but besides
yeah, I'm
that,
ready for Advance Wars.
Yeah. I mean, at least we got Fire Emblem, even though it's Fire Emblem Warriors. I guess that doesn't really count, but they're getting closer. I guess the only big JRPG on the system will be Xenoblade Chronicles, and there's a lot of room to improve there, but that should happen in the next 2 years because RPGs are notoriously longer to develop for.
Yeah, and I think someone had told me that they actually showed a little bit of Fire Emblem for the Switch, like, because they had announced already, like previously, like that they were making one, like a full-on Fire Emblem for the Switch, and I thought that they showed some of it at the Treehouse today, but I could be wrong. Because when I was in line at Nintendo, they were announcing more stuff during the Treehouse, because like I don't think they had announced Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga remake for the 3DS on the presentation, but then they showed it on the Treehouse feed while I was waiting in line. I was like, okay, that's pretty cool that they're still announcing stuff.
Yeah, that's great. They only really showed their big guns, I feel, but like the trailers were so immersive that I felt like I saw so many new game mechanics for even the games that I already knew. Like Super Mario Odyssey is definitely a must buy for me, and probably a system seller just because I get to be a T-Rex now. I like that, but I also like all the old suits that they're bringing back from like Super Mario Land, like the excavator suit or whatever you want to call it, and the candy cane suit, and like there's 2 others I'm forgetting that were throwback suits that looked cool. So I think that coupled with the mounts is gonna like make, you know, Cappy a great new mechanic, and in general gonna make it like maybe the best Mario since 64.
You literally know more about Super Mario Odyssey than I do, and I was there at the show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I already told it to Angelo, but like I didn't play a single game today.
No way.
Yeah, the lines are insane, and I was in line for Mario Odyssey at the beginning of the day, and I was in line for an hour and a half and hadn't moved one space forward, and I couldn't do it. Casey played it, and he said it was real damn good, but I didn't get a chance to play it. I could sometimes see over people and see some stuff going on, and that game looks real crisp. Like the graphics are great. And at one point Mario was wearing like a business suit, and I was thinking that's kind of nifty, but I literally just saw like little snippets of over the shoulder stuff occasionally.
Man, that's disappointing. You got to get your money back. At least you get to experience the whole floor, and you got to see the treehouse feeds and all the people.
Yeah, I saw like for the hour and a half there, I was watching the treehouse stuff without sound, obviously, but seeing a bunch of gameplay. Yeah, there's really not much to experience.
Sorry, speaking of gameplay, though, I just wanted to highlight one more thing that's really important. You probably talked about with regard to the Mario titles, is that XCOM and Mario have a crossover. in terms of gameplay mechanics only, but with the X-Men or with the Rabbids Mario crossover game, it looks so crisp and smooth. Like the frame rate issues, they need to talk with the XCOM creators because it like was going so fast and well, and like it was changing from character to character really easily. Just makes me think like how they're programming so efficiently compared to these other developers with underpowered machines. They're still making it look just as good in cartoony style graphics.
Well, I guess in the XCOM guys' defense is that they've got more units on the screen, you know, at any time. But yeah, like the Mario and Rabbids just looks really cool. And that, I was telling Angelo, like that might be more of a system seller for me than anything on the Switch. With the exception of Mario Odyssey, like those two games. Cause like me, I'm like, okay, yeah, Kirby cool, Yoshi cool. Like I'm not going to play those, but you know, Mario and Rabbids, that's like a must play. And then Mario, of course, like I love the Mario series. Yeah, but I think the thing I'm most excited for from Nintendo is actually the Metroid for the 3DS. Like I haven't actually seen any of the footage yet, but that makes me happy because I never finished Metroid 2 because I only borrowed it from a friend. I think I got real close and I have not played it since. Like I haven't played it since the year that it came out.
Oh shit.
So it'll be like a brand new game for me for sure.
And it'll be one for me too. I was wondering if it was like a good part of the story and how it fits into everything else. But
yeah, it directly leads into Super Metroid. So it's and also like the whole concept of the evolving Metroids is really cool. And there's a bunch of different types of that game, and they all behave differently and they have different strategies. Mm-hmm. So that's a real good game.
Yeah, the remakes have been insane. I just realized that I didn't even talk about my biggest surprise of the show, which was the Shadow of the Colossus remake that looked so much more streamlined and quick, and the frame rate and everything, like from the graphics from the ground up, looked totally made over and way better. And I think the style and as far as the faster paced gameplay is going to make for a game that doesn't lose itself with years into the future. Like if you've ever tried to go to the HD remaster and seen how slow it kind of feels compared to stuff today. So we'll see how that works, but I think it was like my surprise of the show.
Yeah, that was a weird one. I didn't really know what to think about that. Just because they had already, done the HD version, and it's like, I don't know why they didn't just port that to the PS4, but they're clearly putting in a lot more work than that. So I don't mind triple dipping on it, but it seemed like an odd choice to me. Yeah.
Yeah, it could have been.
But it looked real damn good.
I mean, it could have been just a direct sequel or like a remake with new monsters and stuff. Because for a second there, I was like, man, this looks the same, but is it? Like, why would they do that? And then I was just like, well, it looks better. Like, you can obviously tell everything's happening at a quicker pace, and the characters look a lot more detailed with bigger pixel counts and things like that. But I'm glad that I didn't play that HD remaster that I got for free during the PS Plus, because I'll have to wait for one of these. And I don't know, I might have to wait till I get a PS Pro as well. I'm wondering how many of these titles work well on the regular PlayStation and how many have been boosted with like the new support that they've been getting.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Like I had said when we were talking about, the Xbox One X, is that, how much of a difference is it? And we're really going to have to wait for like side by side comparisons, to really see. So this is a weird generation, man. It's real weird.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's kind of hard to keep up almost.
Yeah, for some of the games like Days Gone, it was like, I'm not sure my PlayStation can handle all those zombie type things that are coming out. Maybe I'll get like a smaller count on the regular PS4, but that also, like, I was surprised that they cold opened to like the guy on the motorcycle and showed the way that people were or dogs were chasing after him and how he could shoot on the thing, sort of like Road Rash style, which made for some interesting mechanics. I got one eye open on that one because it seems pretty unique, even though it's like just a genre title.
Yeah, that's what I was telling Angelo, is that I liked what they showed, and it definitely has me more interested than what they showed last year, but I'm still not sold on it, and I don't really know why. But I definitely need to see more of it. Same thing with God of War. Like, it looks great, but I really think that Kratos being in it, like, is what's dampening my excitement for it.
It's crazy that his son can, like, talk to the serpent that you see, because, like, what is the son from? Like, Kratos and who? Like, and who is it? Like, is it a different type of mythology, like, that Kratos had sex with? You know, like, Norse and Greek is what I'm hearing is one theory. But that would make him, like, a super god. Like, God.
Yeah, it's hard to say, and also, like, how much of Kratos is still God at that point, because, you know, he had lost his powers at the end of 2, but do they still linger? Like, there's...
Like, without the revenge aspect of his personality, does, like, most of his power transfer to his son? And, you know, like, is he superpowered because it's more powerful when it goes from one generation to another? Or, like, I don't know. I'm really excited to play as the son, though, or play next to him and see what he's really doing, because there's never been a really big companion video game between a father and a son. I usually feel like you're escorting, like, a damsel in distress, not a child.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, were you disappointed by Sony at all? Just because, like, it was like so much of the stuff was like repeated content, as far as, like, we'd already seen it, like, last year.
I think a lot of it was, like, well, new content from repeated IPs or something like that, and I was happy to see a lot more of each of them and get a better opinion on whether or not I should buy these titles, because I'm still working on the ones from, like, a year ago. So in a way, like, it's really calming to know that, like, I'm not going to have to make more choices really soon on which games to get, because these games are so big now that I've just been spending years on them instead of months. I don't know. There were a couple great surprises, and that's all I really need, besides all the good titles that we see in both Microsoft and Sony's conferences that are going to come to both platforms. I was disappointed that Sony's response to why they're not cross-playing with, like, Microsoft on most things like Rocket League is that they have a contract with their subscribers, and they want to uphold the highest standards, like, to their people who are subscribing to their service. But it's like, that's a lower standard if we can't play with more people. I'm not sure. I guess you think that there's going to be toxicity between Xbox and PS, but, like, it's not worth not giving the person the ability to do that.
I think maybe they don't want to expose the PlayStation players to unfairness because the Microsoft connections are so much better. Like, we're getting trounced by all these Xbox players because they have a better network. Yeah, I'm not even trolling. Like, that's just the way it is.
Right. Yeah.
Especially in areas where you don't get good signal to begin with, like with the fiber optic cables coming out in the next year or two, everything should be fast enough where it doesn't matter, or it's negligible, like we can't even see the millisecond delays, but we're not quite there yet, so maybe in the next generation that'll come.
Yeah, we'll see. Like fiber is in my neighborhood, but not my apartment complex, so that's real frustrating.
So close.
So close.
Well, what else did you guys want to highlight before we stopped on the Sony conference? It's a little bit out of my mind since all that Nintendo stuff happened this morning. It was amazing, but I think that was most of the big things.
Yeah, well, I mean, we already covered it all, so I was more curious about, like, your opinions, because, like, I hadn't really talked to you about the other press conferences yet. I figured you'd be real happy with Nintendo, but I was curious about your thoughts on Sony. What did you don't really have any opinion on Beyond Good and Evil, do you? Like, you didn't play it.
Well, that one looked really cool. Again, it's like a prequel to another one, and I don't really like how they do that. I wish they would continue the story instead of going before it. Although I don't know in this case like what happens in the first one. I did play like the first level of Beyond Good and Evil, and it was just like most games of that generation now a little bit too slow paced for me to like really get into, especially with like the graphic degradation over time. Like I can't really escape into those games anymore. And for me, like I only need a few adventure games per generation because they're kind of like I make them my story, or like try to identify with the characters so much where I think that they're like telling an alternate reality story about me or something like that. And when you keep doing that in different games, or like you lose a sense of self or purpose. So I need to only play a few of them a year, and I think that it was probably the right amount that they showed because there's a lot of games there that, well, for Beyond Good and Evil, that's like another one that I could maybe play since it's, you said, mostly Legend of Zelda-like style adventure, but I'm not sure if this one will be as much because the main character isn't in there yet and they didn't show any gameplay. Like the cinematics were great, but I'm not really sure. It looks like so vertical, and I love the way that you're going to probably use ripcords to propel yourself from one place to another, but I'm not sure it's going to be as smooth as something like that Spider-Man trailer because that was ridiculous. And the way they ended it, showing, both Spider-Men, the Ultimate and the regular, is absolutely jarring because what are they going to do merging both universes together? And it looks like from the villains that like many of the villains they're creating are also original, which is probably a good thing because a lot of those villains you can't really make fight well in a non-comic book type of medium. Like they were created for a certain medium, and now that we're using Spider-Man's license in video games, there's got to be like other types of enemies that work better in these games, and it looks like Insomniac did just that. So
yeah. So they showed it's Peter Parker and Miles Morales in there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, somehow I missed that. I heard like today that Miles Morales is in the game, and I thought that he was just the main character. So I was incorrect on that. That's interesting.
Oh, maybe it is. Maybe it is
they're doing
both
that
of them, but
in
I
the
thought that
comics.
Oh, sorry.
I'm not sure. Like I'll have to go and research that a little bit more.
Yeah,
because
you
I
might
mean
be
they're,
right, sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
You might be right. I think that I just heard the voice that called to Miles, and it sounded similar to like the Spider-Man that was making those funny comments, I think, while he was web slinging. Which, by the way, the web slinging is like second to none, and he actually saves the people's lives that he hits down. I think that's great because you don't really see heroism in like video games like that, like the Batman games. I think he killed 2 out of every 3 people.
Yeah, and like maimed 3 out of 3 that, or like the ones that he didn't kill are just like forever crippled and will never be the same.
Yeah, definitely. But this one, like putting them up in the webs afterwards and like leaving them there for like the cops is like so accurate and honest a depiction of what Spider-Man was that it makes me feel a lot better about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not sure about Beyond Good and Evil. We'll still have to wait and see what more of that game is. It looks probably like the best graphical game in the whole conference, though.
Well, the cinematic, but yeah, with them not showing like one bit of gameplay, like I'll be curious to see what that actually is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's gonna do it for this now pretty beefy E3 special.
Mm-hmm.
Apologies as always to the audio quality because, like I said before, like the Wi-Fi is bad here, so we've got some stuff that I can't trim around because I don't have time to. But you can find us on Twitter to talk to us more about E3 if you like. Patrick.
At some boss.
Angelo.
I'm at a roguish ham.
And you can find me at Julian_Titus. That's E3, guys. Thanks for listening. For myself, Patrick, and Angelo, keep it pantsless, Internet. Goodbye.